Chapter 1882. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "What can I do for you, Saint?" With a few steps, Okin had already descended the stairs and arrived by Ling Han's side. He grinned, his 2 rows of teeth white and neat, and said, "You are a very busy man. It is not easy to even see you." Ling Han merely chuckled. This Okin acted as if he was an old friend, but he was not familiar with him at all. Not to mention that she wasn't familiar with him. She wasn't even familiar with Lu Xianming. It was just that Lu Xianming was very enthusiastic, and she had saved his life once, so she accepted his invitation. His divine sense was sharp, and he discovered that there were at least 4 divine senses locking onto him. However, they were only at the severing mundane tier, so he was naturally completely unafraid. This should be Okan's guard. He himself was only a severing mundane tier. Alchemists did not need to have a very high cultivation level, because the requirement to concoct celestial pills was only the severing mundane tier. If one could break through to this cultivation level, they could even concoct celestials. But in truth, because one's divine sense was not strong enough, it was practically impossible for a severing mundane tier to cultivate into a celestial. At least, such a miracle had never happened before. Generally speaking, severing mundane tiers could at most concoct 2-star celestial pills, and dividing soul tiers could only concoct 3-star celestial pills. It was also because of this that when Alchemy City chose a successor, cultivation level did not need to be the greatest consideration. It was enough if one could advance into the severing mundane tier with a tremendous amount of alchemical pills that he didn't care about the cost. Advancing to the ascending origin tier would not be a dream. Of course, being able to become a high-level alchemist, how could he possibly be an idiot? Thus, ordinarily, the chairperson of Alchemy City would also possess the cultivation level of the ascending origin tier. However, this battle prowess would possibly be at the bottom of the ascending origin tier. It was possible that even if they reached consummate level, they would only be at the level of great accomplishment. No matter what, because Okan's cultivation level was not high. And furthermore, this was Alchemy City. The people he could mobilize were only severing mundane tier. "Ling Han, are you interested in working for me?" Seeing that Ling Han was expressionless, Okan did not beat around the bush, and got straight to the point. Ling Han shook his head and said bluntly, "Not interested." Okan was given the cold shoulder, and his expression was slightly troubled. For a holy son like him, who had high status and authority, it was really very difficult for others to say no to him. Fortunately, he had good self-restraint and immediately suppressed his dissatisfaction. "Don't you want to hear my offer?" He forced a smile. "No need." Ling Han shook his head. The other party had probably misunderstood. He had no intention of working for Lu Xianming at all. Right now he was just a guest at the Lu clan. This was Alchemy City and alchemists were revered. Once a martial artist had a body of skill, wouldn't they all want to sell it to a high-level alchemist, so that they wouldn't have to worry about alchemical pills from then on? After advancing into the severing mundane tier, cultivators would not receive the support of celestial medicine, and their cultivation speed would be as slow as the crawl of a tortoise. They could only improve by relying on celestial medicine. After advancing into the severing mundane tier, it was actually also a race against time. Otherwise, if he suffered a few more immortals' tribulations, and his own strength did not increase, he would be forcibly killed by the heaven and earth. That was why alchemists were so aloof. To a certain extent, they held the lives of cultivators in their hands. Okan had been rebuffed twice in a row, and his displeasure finally showed in his words. He said, "Ling Han, don't get carried away. No matter how much of a genius you are only a mere severing mundane tier, and do not have the right to ask for such an exorbitant price." Ling Han sighed. Why had he encountered another idiot? Who had he offended? If he did not agree to your recruitment, then he was arrogant and conceited. Fuck, had he asked for an exorbitant price? Your sister. How could there be such a person who would talk his own way? Ling Han's expression also turned cold, and he said, "Go to one side, don't waste my time." Ling Han, Okan raised his voice. "I know that you are only waiting for a good offer. I don't mind telling you, though Lu Xianming is indeed more powerful now, Our other holy sons and holy daughters are not to be trifled with, either. There are 9 holy sons and holy daughters in Alchemy City, and aside from a few good-for-nothing trash, Okan, Jiaobang, and Qin Guyu are all qualified to fight with Lu Xianming. What more when we have already decided to join forces and kick him out first? You are hugging a huge tree that is destined to wither. Isn't that too stupid? What an idiot. Which ear of yours did you hear? In which eye did you see that I was going to follow Lu Xianming? You shouldn't be so full of yourself. Ling Han shook his head. He was really worried about this person's intelligence. He still wanted to fight for the position of chairperson. Oh, that's right. His target was also to become the chairperson of Alchemy City, or at least to be the heir. Firstly, he wanted to make a name for himself and inform Commander Guan. And secondly, he liked alchemy in the first place, and had the intention of developing here. In that case, whether it was this Okan or Lu Xianming, they were actually both his competitors. Ling Han scratched his head. He had not considered this problem before. As the alchemy emperor, he was too confident in his alchemy. The rest were mediocre, and he really did not take them seriously. Thus, he had never taken Lu Xianming and the other holy sons and holy daughters seriously, and viewed them as his competitors. It was just like how the Lion King had ascended to the throne. Did he need to care about a few sheep on the road? Ling Han broke into a smile. Since this was a competitor, then he might as well play with him a little, and strike a blow. Then do you have any suggestions? He asked. Okan immediately showed an expression of arrogance. He had only slightly revealed some of his trump cards, and this brat had already chickened out. Fawning on those in power, this was his perverted logic. If you did not listen to me, you would be getting carried away with your success. But if you listened to me, you would be fawning on those in power. In any case, he was high and mighty on both sides, and everything was decided by him. I'll give you 2 choices. The first is a bad plan, and you will leave Lu Xianming and get the hell out of Alchemy City. The second is a good plan, and you will join my service, and I will bring you to the pinnacle of your life. Ling Han almost laughed out loud. Why don't you say bring me to show off, and bring me to fly? He shook his head and said, I choose the third. What third? There was no third. Okan's expression turned cold, and he said, Oh, you still want to add conditions? Fine, tell me. Ling Han smilingly said, If I become the boss, all you holy sons and holy daughters will come and worship me. Now this was a joke, but only Ling Han was filled with confidence. In future, he would become the king of Alchemy City, and then whether it was Okan Lu Xianming, or the other holy sons and holy daughters, they would all have to worship him as their master. Ha 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 ha. Okan laughed coldly. This time, he had really been angered. A mere severing mundane tear. So what if you were a genius? This was Alchemy City. Ling Han walked up the stairs and said, Excuse me. Okan had initially wanted to make a move, but when he thought of Ling Han's frightening strength, the hand that he had raised slightly immediately lowered again. If he made a move, he would only be seeking his own humiliation. Furthermore, if a great holy son was beaten, that would naturally be a loss of face. He humphed, flicked his sleeves and followed up. Ling Han, then I will show you what kind of authority the holy son of Alchemy City has. You want to buy alchemical pills? Ho ho, without my permission, who would dare sell them to you? Was this kind of breadth of mind worthy of being a holy son? Ling Han shook his head internally. In comparison, Lu Xianming was indeed much stronger. No wonder he was the most popular. However, he was not here to buy alchemical pills. And you are already so pleased with yourself. Aren't you afraid that you will fly into a rage out of humiliation later? Speaking of flying into a rage out of humiliation, Ling Han couldn't help but show a smile. Then he would toy with this guy. Chapter 1884. Aren't you here to support this person? The mid-level apprentice didn't understand. Why did he want Ling Han to refine the most difficult pill? However, since the saint had spoken, would he dare to question him? He didn't even dare to ask the reason. He directly said to Ling Han, Then you can refine the green rainbow pill. Perhaps he was the best at this. Ling Han nodded indifferently. They came to an alchemy room. Ling Han reported his name, and then entered, starting his path of alchemy in the celestial realm. Okan smirked coldly. He wanted to let Ling Han have his help. With his help, it would not be difficult for him to deal with a low-level, or even a high-level trainee. But if he angered him, humph. In the pill room, Ling Han had already begun. He began by sorting out the medicinal ingredients, refining them, opening the furnace, and starting the fire in one go. Amazing! The intermediate apprentice couldn't help but praise. At the very least, he was inferior to Ling Han in terms of these techniques. It was pleasing to the eye, simply a kind of visual appreciation. Oken was shocked as well. So it turned out that Ling Han really knew alchemy. He had originally thought that Ling Han had only blurted out that he wanted to take the alchemist test because he had been angered to the point of exploding. However, the truth was not like that. Hiss, could it be that he wasn't here to buy pills? Come to think of it, Lu Xianming should be very good to this guy. In that case, no matter what medicinal pill Ling Han wanted, Lu Xianming would be able to provide it to him. Was there a need for Ling Han to come here personally? However, no one was perfect, and there was a limit to one's energy. Furthermore, Ling Han was far from reaching the limits of his cultivation level. So where would he find the extra time to spend on alchemy? How did he learn to do this? All-round genius? I don't believe it. However, regardless of whether he believed it or not, Ling Han had already entered a state of incisiveness. In just half a day, a batch of cyan rainbow pills had already been refined. This was naturally of the highest quality. Past. That mid-level trainee's face was filled with admiration. No wonder he could obtain Okan's personal accompaniment. And no wonder he could concoct the green rainbow pill of the highest difficulty level. He indeed had such ability. Meanwhile, Okan's expression was incredibly dark. This was practically a slap to his face. Ling Han smiled and said, "Now let's continue with the intermediate apprentice test." The middle-ranked acolyte was no longer qualified to be a witness. He immediately went to report, and 3 high-ranked acolytes walked over. "Greetings, Holy Son." They first bowed towards Okan's. Okan waved his hand. He was now rather curious as to where Ling Han's limits lay. "Let's refine the Heaven and Earth Unity pill," he said. The 3 high-grade apprentices all faltered upon hearing this. A long time ago, the Heaven and Earth Heart pill was a high-grade pill, but due to certain reasons, it was classified as a mid-grade pill. However, this was enough to show just how difficult it was to refine. The other party was going to take the mid-level apprentice examination. Yet you directly took out an almost high-tier pill for him to refine. Wasn't this making things difficult for him? However, they did not dare to say anything. Since the Lord Saint had spoken, who would dare to cause trouble for themselves? Thus, Ling Han began to refine the Heaven and Earth Unity pill. The moment he began, these 3 high-grade acolytes became completely intoxicated, deeply convinced by Ling Han's skills. This was truly a newbie. He was practically a veteran alchemist, able to slip away as he pleased. Pass! After appraising Ling Han's completed pill, the 3 high-grade acolytes unanimously gave him a 5-star high evaluation. Ling Han broke into a smile. Continue with the advanced apprentice test. An acolyte was an acolyte. Even if it was a high-grade one, it could not possibly alarm an alchemist. It was just that the number of witnesses had increased from 3 to 10. Oken did not say anything else at the side. He could finally tell that Ling Han indeed had extremely high attainments in the field of alchemy. Forget it. So what if you've been certified as a high-grade acolyte? You don't have many days left to live anyway. Alchemist? What a joke. Even if a high-grade acolyte wanted to climb to this level, it would be impossible to achieve without over 100 million years of cultivation. But Ling Han's flame of life would not surpass 10,000 years at most. So how could it be possible? Without Oken pressuring him from the side, the difficulty of this test naturally decreased sharply. Ling Han could refine any high-grade alchemical pill he wanted, and it was not a specific one. This was naturally logical. The alchemy room also had its own time acceleration function, and a mere day later, the high-grade alchemical pill was completed. Pass! The 10 high-grade acolytes had long since been convinced by Ling Han's skills, and were not stingy with their expressions of admiration. Even Ling Han could not stand their slightly fervent gazes. Continue with the alchemist test, Ling Han hurriedly said. As these words left his mouth, The surroundings instantly fell silent. Take the alchemist test? Hiss, you're so ambitious. Do you know how many alchemists there are even in Alchemy City? 138,643. Don't say a few 100,000. But how big was Alchemy City? This was a 4-star city, and its population was counted in the trillions. Furthermore, these alchemists were not all from Alchemy City, but about half of the entire Eastern Celestial Realm. That was only a little over 130,000 points. From this, it could be seen how high the threshold for alchemists was. Which alchemist had not been a high-grade acolyte for hundreds of millions of years, billions of years, or tens of billions of years? Some people still held the title of high-grade acolyte, even when they died of old age. Furthermore, this was the fate of the great majority of people. If it were not so, how could alchemists possess such a high status? The rarer something was, the greater its value, and so were people. From a certain aspect, alchemists were even rarer than exquisite beauties. What can't I? Ling Han asked smilingly. The test is possible, but to refine a celestial pill, you must use celestial medicine, a high-grade acolyte said. This palace does not provide celestial medicine, and you must prepare your own. No problem, Ling Han said. Seeing how certain Ling Han was, Oken finally showed a wary expression. Ling Han could really do it. No one was an idiot. If they did not have some confidence, who would come to the alchemist's palace and fail in public, losing face and wealth? But to say that Ling Han had the strength of a 1-star alchemist, how could anyone believe that? After the 10 high-grade acolytes exchanged a look, someone said, "That's fine, but an alchemist must be present for the test." They did not have the right to come and test an alchemist. Ling Han nodded. An alchemist test, this was a grand spectacle. Just think about it. There were only a few alchemists in the whole of Alchemy City, and to be able to become an alchemist, they had to at least be in the severing mundane tier. But after such a long period of time, there were actually only a little over 130,000. Thus, when they heard that someone was going to take the alchemist test, this naturally caused a great commotion. It was possible that this was a rising star, and perhaps he would become a big shot of Alchemy City in the future. Who knew? To say nothing of the alchemists, even a great many martial art clans all sent people over to observe. A newly advanced alchemist was worth roping in. However, when everyone found out that the person taking the alchemist test was actually Ling Han, all of them had similar thoughts. Are you joking? You are a martial art prodigy, a man who defeated Zhao Qingfeng with a minor level lower. And now you actually go and refine Russian alchemical pills without attending to your proper duties? Has your head been kicked by a donkey? It was not that alchemists were bad, but that you could not put the cart before the horse. If you had so much energy, why didn't you spend it on martial art? Fuck. Chapter 1885. After learning that this person was Ling Han, everyone's anticipation instantly dropped by half. There were specializations in every field, and a person's energy was limited. This was an incredibly realistic problem. How many years had you lived? Those with good judgment could judge very accurately. Within 500 years of age. Then, even if you had spent your time in the time cultivation chamber from birth, and had even been accelerated at the highest level, it would only be 50,000 years at most. 50,000 years to become a 1-star alchemist. What kind of joke was that? You had to be crazy. But no matter what, the fact that the greatest genius of martial art was actually taking the test for alchemists still piqued the interest of most people, and they began to watch from the sidelines. And when the news spread, it even alarmed a few holy sons and holy daughters. They were all qualified to compete for the position of chairperson, like Lu Xianming, Jiao Bang, and Qing Guyu. The remaining holy sons and holy daughters had long since stopped caring about worldly affairs, because they knew that they had no hope of winning, and kept an incredibly low profile. In terms of the most shocked, it had to be Lu Xianming. What did Ling Han mean by this? Such doubts churned in his mind. He didn't want to be a genius of martial art. So why did he want to become an alchemist? Once Ling Han really became a 1-star alchemist, then the significance of this would be too great. A 1-star alchemist who had not surpassed 50,000 years of age. This was a supreme super genius. In fact, it was even more shocking than Ling Han defeating Zhao Qingfeng. After all, there were many geniuses of martial art. To say nothing of those far away, just Yin Xianlu alone could suppress an era, becoming a supreme monarch. However, a one-star alchemist with 50,000 years of age, that was really unheard of. This kind of genius would be strongly supported by Alchemy City. A new holy son? With the titles of a genius of martial art and a genius of alchemy, which holy son or holy daughter could compete with Ling Han for the position of future chairperson of Alchemy City? He was definitely unmatched, invincible. Lu Xianming felt a rumble in his head. At this moment, he only had one thought, and that was that Ling Han definitely could not succeed. Otherwise, he would be forced to stand on the opposite side of Ling Han. He would never allow anyone to threaten his position as the future leader. He couldn't help but look towards Qin Guyu, Jiao Bang, and O Kansas. Coincidentally, these three people were also looking at each other. They could all sense a signal from each other's eyes, and that was that they definitely could not have another holy son, especially a monster like Ling Han. However, the majority of people did not have such thoughts. On the contrary, there were some who were very expectant. If Ling Han could succeed, then he would definitely become a legendary figure of Alchemy City in the future, as he excelled in both martial arts and alchemy. Under such circumstances, filled with complicated expectations, Ling Han entered the alchemy chamber and began his most important step in Alchemy City. He was naturally refining the purple moon soul-suppressing pill. Merely the time required to concoct this pill would be as long as 3 months. Thankfully, this alchemy chamber had the effect of accelerating time, and it was as high as 100 times. Thus, if Ling Han could succeed, he would only need a single day. In the eyes of the crowd, all of Ling Han's movements had been sped up 100-fold. Thus, his movements appeared even smoother and faster. However, even if it had been sped up 100-fold, his movements were still as smooth as flowing water, giving those who saw it a pleasant feeling. Gasps of astonishment rang out. There was no lack of true alchemists here. As the saying went, the laymen enjoyed the liveliness, while the experts knew the ropes. From Ling Han's movements, this was indeed the style of an experienced alchemist. This caused them to be extremely shocked. Such a young alchemist was too inconceivable. It could only be said that there really were geniuses in this world. It was just that they had not discovered them in the past. The expressions of Lu Xianming, O Kan, and the others also became more and more unsightly. Ling Han had already begun concocting the pill. Though this was the most important part, an ominous feeling had already risen up in them. Perhaps this guy would really be able to succeed. They were all afraid, though they were all holy sons and holy daughters, and had even reached the height of 2-star alchemists. Compared to the achievements that Ling Han had obtained, they were completely overshadowed. There were many alchemists in Alchemy City whose level was higher than theirs, so why were they the only ones who had become holy sons and holy daughters? Because they had the potential to rush up to 3 stars, 4 stars, or even 5 stars. But if Ling Han could become a 1-star alchemist within 50,000 years, then his potential would undoubtedly surpass everyone else's. This was a great enemy. The 4 holy sons and holy daughters' gazes intersected, and powerful killing intent rose up in all of them. Even Lu Xianming was no exception. His heart had already become very hard. In the outside world, a day's time passed very quickly, and inside the alchemy chamber, Ling Han was also about to pass 100 days. In his hands, alchemy had become an art, exuding a kind of beauty. Pa! He suddenly slapped the alchemy cauldron forcefully. The 9 heavens flame moved slightly, and the alchemy cauldron instantly exploded. Failed. Everyone had been completely intoxicated, and seeing the alchemy cauldron suddenly explode, they were naturally extremely disappointed. But that was fine. Being able to persist for so long before the cauldron exploded, then in less than a few times, Ling Han would definitely be able to become a 1-star alchemist. Such a young 1-star alchemist, and added with the halo of being the greatest genius in martial art. What kind of concept was this? A new star, definitely a super new star, and was worth recruiting at all costs. Lu Xianming and the others also breathed a sigh of relief, but they all became extremely cautious. They definitely had to get rid of Ling Han as soon as possible. Otherwise, once he became a one-star alchemist, or even a holy son, then they would not be able to escape. However, everyone's expression changed in the next second. Though the alchemy cauldron had been broken, 3 alchemical pills were fluttering in the alchemy chamber, as if they had grown wings, and were about to escape. Success, success! Everyone was stunned. This was really unexpected. And the expressions of Lu Xianming and the others instantly became incredibly ugly. They realized that a frightening opponent had appeared. Ling Han opened his hand and caught those 3 fluttering alchemical pills. As his origin power surged, they instantly stopped obediently in his palm. He pushed open the door and walked out, tossing the alchemical pills to an alchemist, and smilingly said, "Please inspect them." Shwa, instantly a great many alchemists crowded over. Gasp, not only did he succeed, it's actually medium grade. This young man, are you sure he's a genius in martial art? I've been a one-star alchemist for more than 7 billion years, and even now, I still can't concoct medium-grade celestial pills. In comparison, I'm practically at the level of an idiot. All the alchemists were talking at once, all incredibly stunned. It was really not easy for an alchemist to appear. What more this kind of newcomer, who had made his debut the strongest. This was fuck you scary, directly starting from medium grade. Ling Han, an alchemy apprentice, walked over. On the surface, he only looked to be 15 or 16 years old, but his actual age was at least millions and millions of years old. The fire of life could not lie. Seeing him walk over, everyone's expression became stern. Even those alchemists were no exception, and they all opened up a path for him. They did not revere this alchemy apprentice, but rather the person he represented, Alchemist Zicheng. Chapter 1886. I am. Ling Han smiled faintly. The alchemy apprentice was slightly lazy and said, "My master invites you." "Who is your master?" Ling Han asked. He didn't recognize this alchemy apprentice. The alchemy apprentice showed an expression of arrogance and said, "You don't even recognize my master, and you can actually become an alchemist?" Ling Han couldn't help but feel annoyed. Whether I can become an alchemist or not is something that can be decided by your bullshit. Who are you? He clasped his hands behind his back and said, "Ha! I indeed don't recognize who your master is. Moreover, who are you to speak to me like this?" In terms of strength in martial art, he could practically crush all severing mundane tiers, and in terms of skill in alchemy, he was already a one-star alchemist. But this alchemy apprentice's strength in martial art was third severance, and a mere alchemy apprentice was at most a high-level trainee. "Are you worthy of being arrogant to me? Fuck off." The alchemy apprentice couldn't help but tremble in anger. He pointed at Ling Han and said, "How dare you actually dare to insult me? Can't I insult you? You're nothing in the first place, and you still dare to strut around in front of me." Ling Han was completely unconcerned. "Let me ask you, what right do you have to be on equal footing with me?" Aye. The alchemy apprentice was speechless. He could be so arrogant naturally because of alchemist Zicheng. As for himself, if he wasn't completely worthless, at least he wasn't anything to brag about. The main reason was because he was used to being arrogant normally. As alchemist Zicheng's personal alchemy apprentice, everywhere he passed by, everyone would be polite to him. Even Immortal Palace tier elites would affectionately call him Little Mo when they saw him. Alchemists were naturally no exception. Alchemist Zicheng was one of the only 3 4-star alchemists in Alchemy City. Thus, even 3-star alchemists were very polite when they saw him, and would always have requests from him. For example, they wanted to see Alchemist Zicheng and have him report to him. But now a mere 4-star alchemist, a newly advanced 1-star alchemist, actually dared to point at his nose and scold him? This. Are you trying to rebel? Ling Han, you've gone too far. The alchemy apprentice shrieked. If you offend me, you'll find it difficult to take a single step in Alchemy City. Seeing this scene, the crowd shook their heads. This pill attendant's surname was Mo, and most people would address him as Pill Master Mo. Even though he wasn't a pill master, everyone would still give him some face. As Alchemist Zicheng's trusted aide, This alchemy apprentice Mo possessed great authority. Practically no one dared to offend him. Even Lu Xianming and the others were very polite in front of this person. This brat is really young and impetuous. Why are you bickering with alchemy apprentice Mo? If he speaks ill of alchemist Zicheng, you'll definitely suffer. Okan's anger had dissipated a little, because he was not the only one who had been angered by Ling Han. Even he was not willing to offend alchemy apprentice Mo. But Ling Han had directly taken the blame without even thinking. Although he hated Ling Han, he couldn't help but admire him. Ling Han snorted and said, "You're just a dog. What are you barking for? Don't forget, everything you have was given to you by others. Of course you can take it back as well. You think you're worthy?" Alchemy apprentice Mo shouted hoarsely. He had never been looked down upon like this before. He definitely had to make Ling Han lower his head in front of him. Ling Han smiled slightly and said, "I won't lower myself to the level of trash. Move aside, don't block the way." Seeing that Ling Han was about to leave, alchemy apprentice Mo hurriedly jumped out, stretched out a hand to stop him, and said, "You're not allowed to leave." "What? You want to fight with me?" Ling Han asked smilingly. "Do you think I'm afraid of you?" Alchemy apprentice Mo was arrogant in the first place, and furthermore, he was someone in the field of alchemy, so he naturally did not know much about Ling Han's situation. In his eyes, though he was a third severance, because his alchemy skills were lacking, he had put more effort into martial art. Hence he, a third severance, would not lose to a fourth severance alchemist. Pooh, a considerable number had already laughed out loud. Truly, the ignorant were fearless. It was quite interesting. When they heard that Ling Han was going to take the alchemist test, they were incredibly shocked. But on the other hand, alchemy apprentice Mo only thought that Ling Han was an alchemy prodigy. So when he heard Ling Han say that he was going to fight, he naturally scoffed. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, who would believe that there was actually such a prodigy in this world? Alchemist Mo don't. Someone flattered, hurriedly revealing Ling Han's background. Holy shit. Alchemy apprentice Mo instantly grimaced. Are you still human? So be it if you're so strong in martial art, but you're actually also an alchemy prodigy? Are you trying to let me live? His aura instantly weakened, but because he was used to being arrogant and domineering, he immediately puffed out his chest and said, "I won't fight with a barbarian like you. If you insult me, that is equivalent to insulting alchemist Zicheng, and that is equivalent to insulting the entire alchemy city. Who here would agree to let you do as you please?" Ling Han couldn't help but laugh and said, "You're really quite thick-skinned. You're just a mere alchemy apprentice, and you're only a high-grade trainee at most. You're a mere third severance, and you actually say that insulting you is equivalent to insulting the entire alchemy city? I really don't believe that." "Humph, it's good that you know." Alchemy apprentice Mo was slightly smug. This wasn't the first time that he had used his connections to intimidate others. Even many king tiers had to lower their heads in front of him. Ling Han nodded and said, "If you have the ability, try insulting me." "So what if I insult you? You lowly bastard, I'll insult you 100 times. Pa." Alchemy apprentice Mo hadn't even finished speaking when he was lifted up by the neck by Ling Han. He naturally couldn't continue speaking, and his legs kicked wildly in panic. His face had already turned green. Everyone heard it. "He was the one who insulted me." Ling Han shrugged, appearing to be quite innocent. "I'm a dignified one-star alchemist, and this little alchemy apprentice actually dares to insult me. Do you guys think that he deserves a beating? Of course he deserves a beating." He didn't wait for anyone to reply. "Pa." He slapped alchemy apprentice Mo across the face. There was a lot of force behind this slap, and alchemy apprentice Mo directly spat out a mouthful of blood, along with a few broken teeth. One side of his face was visibly swelling up. Gasp! Everyone gritted their teeth. As the saying went, if you want to beat a dog, you have to beat its master. Alchemy apprentice Mo's master was alchemist Zicheng, a top-tier figure in Alchemy City. Was he someone that could be taught a lesson? However, the problem here was that Ling Han was extremely reasonable. A measly high-grade trainee like you dares to insult a one-star alchemist? What do you think the hierarchy is? If there weren't even any rules, how could you achieve anything? Pa. Ling Han continued to slap Alchemy Apprentice Mo until he was satisfied. Only then did he casually toss Alchemy Apprentice Mo to the side. Since he dared to slap Alchemy Apprentice Mo like this, he naturally had his own considerations. He wasn't acting on impulse. Firstly, Alchemist Ziqing definitely liked him very much. That was why he had sent someone to invite him over. Then, as long as this great alchemist was a normal person, he wouldn't listen to Alchemy Apprentice Mo's one-sided statement. Secondly, even if Alchemist Ziqing had been fooled, weren't there still 2 4-star alchemists here? On one side was a terrifyingly young prodigy alchemist, while on the other side was only a lackey. Who do you think those 2 great alchemists would side with? If the scales still tipped in Alchemy Apprentice Mo's favor, then there would be no point for Ling Han to stay here. He wouldn't want such a rotten force, even if it was given to him. Ling Han waved his sleeves and swaggered off. From Lu Xianming's expression, he could tell that it was impossible for him to stay in Alchemy Apprentice Mo's residence. It was better to leave before Lu Xianming said anything. Everyone looked at Ling Han's back as he left, and then at Alchemy Apprentice Mo, who was still groaning on the ground. A feeling of admiration welled up in their hearts. This brat's really awesome. Chapter 1888. Holy Sun Dong scooted over, his eyes a little sinister. Lu Xianming glared at him and said, "Don't say anything." He wanted to be alone and carefully think of a strategy. Yes, Sun Dong hurriedly retreated, but there was a hint of a sinister grin at the corners of his lips. As long as Lu Xianming did not help Ling Han, how was Ling Han going to survive this tribulation? Beating up Alchemist Ziqing's alchemy apprentice, could he easily survive? He laughed internally, and then his smile became wider and wider, almost unable to hold back his laughter. Elsewhere, Okin Qing Guyu and the others were also discussing a strategy with their subordinates. Ling Han's sudden rise had completely disrupted their plans. Perhaps Lu Xianming was no longer the target that they had to join forces against. In fact, they even had to join forces with Lu Xianming to deal with Ling Han. But in the end, they still decided not to do anything. Ling Han had beaten up Alchemy Apprentice Mo, and with Alchemist Ziqing's protectiveness, how could he let Ling Han off? Since Alchemist Ziqing was going to make a move, why would they need to expend effort? Could it be that they could settle something that Alchemist Ziqing could not? Thus, they chose to temporarily sit back and watch. Not only them, but a great many forces in the city also temporarily stopped their recruitment of Ling Han. They wanted to see if Ling Han could survive this life crisis. If he could not, then they would have wasted their time and resources for nothing. And it was at this moment that Ling Han went to the Alchemist Pavilion. From the 2nd level onward, there were no inns in Alchemy City. Those that could come here were either people of Alchemy City, or had some special status, and were directly received by the officials. Thus, even if Ling Han had money, he had no place to stay, so he could only go to the Alchemist Pavilion. He was now a 1-star alchemist, so he naturally had the right to stay in the Alchemist Pavilion. No one could chase him away. When Ling Han arrived with a beauty, everyone in the Alchemist Pavilion had different expressions. You actually dared to come here? After recovering from their shock, the majority of people focused their gazes on the Empress. Thankfully, the Empress was wearing a veil on her face. Otherwise, if her true appearance was revealed, it would probably cause a huge commotion here. Ling Han smiled faintly and pulled a random person over, saying, "I heard that alchemists all have a place to stay here. Is that true?" That person's face instantly turned bitter. He felt that he was really too unlucky. Ling Han didn't capture anyone else, but he did. What if he was tainted by bad luck? But since it was Ling Han's question, he didn't dare to ignore it. That was because Ling Han was so audacious that he even dared to beat up Alchemy Apprentice Mo. Yes. He nodded. "Well, what procedures do you have to go through?" "I want to stay here," Ling Han said. The pill refining rooms here all had time acceleration, and the reason he needed the time cultivation room was not for his cultivation. Thus he could save a lot of money and concoct pills here. That unlucky person could only do as he was told. He was an elementary alchemist apprentice, so in front of a 1-star alchemist like Ling Han, he could only be subservient. However, his face was as bitter as a gourd. Everyone was astonished. Ling Han had just beaten up alchemy apprentice Mo. Yet he dared to come to the alchemist pavilion so casually now? Or did he get his courage from? True. If he wasn't so audacious, how could he have dared to beat up alchemy apprentice Mo? Ling Han had just settled down when he saw alchemy apprentice Mo arrive again. Ling Han, get the hell out here. Ling Han walked out of the room, only to see alchemy apprentice Mo standing there fiercely, looking completely unafraid of him. He couldn't help but smile and say, "What? I didn't beat you to my heart's content. So you're here again?" Alchemy apprentice Mo couldn't help but blush. The previous experience was a great humiliation for him. He humphed and said, "Don't be so smug. I've come here on Grandmaster Zicheng's orders to bring you to receive your punishment." As expected, everyone nodded in their minds. Alchemist Zicheng was renowned for shielding those close to him, and it was precisely because of this that alchemy apprentice Mo was able to act so domineeringly. If this matter could be easily resolved, why would everyone be so apprehensive of alchemy apprentice Mo? Ling Han gave an "oh" and said, "You've come to fake an imperial decree again. Since this is Grandmaster Zicheng's order, then show me his handwritten decree." Alchemy apprentice Mo faltered for a moment. Where had this handwritten decree come from? Who in Alchemy City didn't recognize him? He was Grandmaster Zicheng's alchemy apprentice, and his words represented Grandmaster Zicheng's will. It was also because of this that he could sometimes fake imperial decrees, and he could mess with whoever he wanted. Of course, he didn't dare to go too far. However, this time, it was indeed Grandmaster Zicheng who had spoken, and he had told him to bring Ling Han over. However, he hadn't said that he would punish Ling Han. It was alchemy apprentice Mo, who had added his own understanding. In his mind, Grandmaster Zicheng doted on him so much, so if he didn't summon Ling Han to punish him severely, then why would he do so? "But I really don't have a handwritten decree. You actually dare to suspect me?" Alchemy apprentice Mo roared in anger. He had truly been wrong this time, and he was extremely unhappy. Ling Han shook his head and said, "I'm a one-star alchemist, and you're merely a lowly alchemy apprentice, so why can't I suspect you? Moreover, there's a strict hierarchy among alchemists. A lowly alchemy apprentice like you isn't qualified to order me around? Who gave you such guts? As expected, I still haven't beaten you to your heart's content. You dare?" Alchemy apprentice Mo said in a stern voice. However, he continuously retreated. He was truly afraid of Ling Han. In the past, no one had dared to hit him. However, not long ago, he had suffered a beating from Ling Han, so this was naturally still fresh in his mind. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "If you don't have a guilty conscience, why are you retreating now?" "Retreating? It's naturally because you've scared me." However, alchemy apprentice Mo couldn't say this out loud. Doing so would make him appear extremely weak. He stubbornly tried to boost his morale, and said, "I won't lower myself to the level of a barbarian like you. My master has already said that he wants you to immediately go and see him. If you don't listen, you'll have to bear the consequences." He was using alchemist Zicheng to pressure Ling Han. A 4-star alchemist was comparable to a celestial king. Ling Han didn't back down in the slightest. Instead, he said, "Oh, I only know that some people have issued fake decrees. Also, if someone messes up twice, who knows what will happen?" Alchemy apprentice Mo's expression involuntarily changed. He was indeed favored, but this didn't mean that he could really mess around. If he failed to complete alchemist Zicheng's orders twice, Ling Han would definitely be in a miserable state. However, how good could he be? He wasn't some powerful figure, and he was irreplaceable. "Ling Han, I didn't issue a fake decree. My master has indeed ordered me to send you over." He relaxed, no longer being overbearing. Right now, the most important thing was to trick Ling Han into going to the 5th level. Once he arrived there, alchemist Zicheng would issue a strict order, and Ling Han would naturally not be able to escape. However, alchemist Zicheng hadn't given him a clear order to capture Ling Han, so how could he dare to act recklessly? He could make use of alchemist Zicheng's words to a certain extent, but he definitely didn't dare to fabricate anything. He was still aware of this rule. Ling Han shook his head and said, "There's no proof. In any case, I don't believe you." Alchemy apprentice Mo was a little driven mad. Why are you so unreasonable? He hesitated for a moment before gritting his teeth and saying, Then what do I have to do to make you come with me? Everyone was astonished when they heard this. Alchemy apprentice Mo was clearly giving in. He was actually giving in. Could it be that this guy was a bitch? The more respectful one was to him, the more arrogant and manipulative he would be. However, after being beaten up by Ling Han, he actually became obedient? Fuck. Reading on a cell phone is more refreshing. Chapter 1889. To Alchemy apprentice Mo, this was an extraordinary humiliation. He had actually lowered his head to someone who had humiliated him. Just thinking about it made him feel aggrieved. However, he had already displeased alchemist Zicheng once. Could it be that he had to return alone this time? He couldn't bear alchemist Zicheng's fury. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, My legs are a little sore. He retrieved a chair and sat down. Then he crossed his legs. His intentions couldn't be more obvious. Come massage my legs. Fuck awesome. Everyone's heart thumped upon seeing this. Ling Han was far too daring. He actually wanted Alchemy apprentice Mo to massage his legs. One had to know that Alchemy apprentice Mo was a servant of Grandmaster Zicheng. Did he think of himself as the second Grandmaster Zicheng? Alchemy apprentice Mo's face instantly flushed red. This is too much, too much. Ling Han, are you not going to give yourself a way out? He asked loudly. He felt incredibly aggrieved. What did I do to you? Ling Han asked slowly. Indeed, Ling Han hadn't said anything at all. Everything was just Alchemy apprentice Mo's understanding. However, who wouldn't understand his intentions? Alchemy apprentice Mo gritted his teeth and said, This is your condition? Ling Han merely smiled and didn't say anything. Alchemy apprentice Mo was about to explode in anger, yet he had no choice but to suppress his anger as he weighed the pros and cons. In the past, he had also received orders from alchemist Zicheng to summon certain people. Who wouldn't be as excited as a monkey after being summoned by alchemist Zicheng? They only knew how to continuously express their gratitude to him. Thus, he could take advantage of this opportunity to force them to give him benefits. However, Ling Han was different. He directly fell out with him. Thinking about it now, Alchemy apprentice Mo truly felt some regret. Actually, if he hadn't been so arrogant and had treated Ling Han just a little better, all of this wouldn't have happened. Who asked him to treat Ling Han as if he were those people from before? Time could be sped up, but it couldn't be rewound. Thus he couldn't start all over again. If he failed again this time, he would very likely fall out of favor. And what would that mean? Alchemy apprentice Mo clearly knew that although there were many people trying to curry favor with him now, that was all because he was a subordinate of alchemist Zicheng. Moreover, he had also offended who knew how many people. Once he lost this golden reputation, what would await him? There are a lot of people who would kill him. When he thought of this possibility and this terrifying scene, he couldn't help but shiver. He clenched his teeth and slowly walked forward. No way, Pillboy Mo really has to admit defeat. In the eyes of the crowd, every one of them was stunned. It turned out that this person was really tough on the outside, but weak on the inside. In the past, they were too afraid of the halo around him. In reality, he was actually a paper tiger. Everyone came to a sudden realization. They could only blame themselves for being too careful. Due to their reverence toward alchemist Zicheng, they had even praised alchemy apprentice Mo to the skies. In reality, he was just a mere alchemy boy. What kind of mighty figure was alchemist Zicheng? Would he really be influenced by a measly alchemy apprentice and make a biased decision? Alchemy apprentice Mo walked over to Ling Han's side. Enduring the humiliation, he squatted down and began to massage Ling Han's legs. Alchemy apprentice Mo didn't stop until Ling Han shouted for him to stop. Only after at least an hour did Ling Han stretch lazily and say, It's about time. My legs aren't sore anymore, so let's take a walk. Alchemy apprentice Mo breathed a sigh of relief. However, there was a vicious glint in the depths of his eyes. As long as he completed alchemist Zicheng's request, he would definitely make Ling Han better. If he didn't torture Ling Han until he wished he was dead, his surname wouldn't be Mo. Ling Han couldn't help but chuckle when he saw this. and he said, "Your expression is scaring me. I'd better sit here for a while longer to calm my nerves." He then sat back down. "Fuck your sister." Alchemy apprentice Emo almost spat out a mouthful of blood. "You can't play like this. I've just massaged your legs in front of everyone. So you can't be so quick to make a divination." He secretly cursed himself. Why did he have to reveal his killing intent just then? What was worse was that he had been caught by Ling Han. He hurriedly said, "It's best not to make Grandmaster Zicheng wait for too long." Although there was a hint of advice in his words, it was more of a plea. He was just short of saying, "Grandpa, don't play around anymore." Ling Han looked at Alchemy Apprentice Mo meaningfully. Only when Alchemy Apprentice Mo's heart started to thump did he say, "Fine, let's go then." Alchemy Apprentice Mo hurriedly walked over to help Ling Han up. His respectful and attentive expression caused everyone to shake their heads. At this moment, Alchemy Apprentice Mo didn't have the slightest shred of arrogance left. Sure enough, evil people needed evil people to deal with them. If Ling Han knew about this, he would definitely feel extremely wronged. What kind of evil person was he? Alchemy Apprentice Mo led the way, while Ling Han lazily followed behind. He had placed the Empress and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden into the Black Tower. It was better to be safe than sorry. If Alchemist Zicheng thought differently from him and wanted to use force against him, he could hide in the Black Tower. But what about the two women? As Ling Han and Alchemy Apprentice Mo disappeared into the distance, the crowd immediately started to discuss spiritedly. With Ling Han's departure, would it mean that Alchemy City would lose a rising star from now on? Many people shook their heads, feeling that Ling Han's chances of survival were slim. Although Ling Han had gained the upper hand in his battle with Alchemy Apprentice Mo, the crucial point wasn't Ling Han or Alchemy Apprentice Mo. As long as Alchemist Zicheng was dissatisfied with Ling Han, this rising star definitely wouldn't be able to live until tomorrow. With Ling Han's bad temper, it was really hard to say. Under Alchemy Apprentice Mo's guidance, they quickly arrived at the teleportation formation of the city. Alchemy Apprentice Mo was still quite influential, so they didn't need to pay any star stones. The teleportation formation was activated, and the two of them were sent to the 5th level. In fact, the space of the 5th level was smaller than the other 4 levels. Of course, this was relative. The absolute area was still astonishingly large. There were only 17 mountains here, and there was a mighty figure on each mountain who occupied a peak. Even if they had descendants, they basically wouldn't live together. Normally, they would have 1 or 2 servants that were similar to alchemy apprentices or Dao apprentices to serve them. Thus, there was almost no trace of people here. As far as the eye could see, there were only green mountains and green trees, and it was full of vitality. Alchemy Apprentice Mo led Ling Han to the 7th peak. As for whether there was any particular arrangement of the mountains, Ling Han didn't know. There was no path in the mountains, so Ling Han and Alchemy Apprentice Mo flew to the top of the mountain. There weren't many strong gales here, so even severing mundane tier cultivators could easily reach the top. A small manor appeared in front of them. It was really very small, and compared to this mountain, it was like a drop in the ocean. "Go in. Grandmaster Zicheng has been waiting for you for a long time," Alchemy Apprentice Mo said with a cold smile. In his mind, Ling Han actually dared to delay Alchemist Zicheng's time. Wasn't this an act of seeking death? Ling Han smiled faintly as he strode into the manor. He had a guess in his mind, but he needed to confirm it. Alchemy Apprentice Mo didn't enter. Instead, he closed the door and stood guard outside. In the manor, the most eye-catching thing was an alchemy room. It had the most powerful ability to accelerate the flow of time, but it could only accelerate it by 100 times. This was possibly the limit of 4-star forces. Ling Han took a few more glances before looking at an elder, who was currently drinking tea in the garden. He had a head full of white beard, but his spirit was hale and hearty. This was especially the case for his eyes, which were bright and spirited. They were filled with a dignified aura. "Brat, you're quite bold, huh?" Chapter 1890. This old man was naturally Alchemist Zicheng. There was an indescribable might in his eyes as he stared at Ling Han. He didn't need to do anything, and a single thought from him was enough to suppress the entire universe. He was indescribably strong. An ascending origin tier elite was naturally powerful enough. Thoughts flashed through Ling Han's mind, but his expression didn't change. Instead, he smiled faintly and said, "Senior, I don't really understand. I've asked you to come several times, but you've made all sorts of excuses. Are you even more arrogant than me?" Alchemist Ziqing said, his expression tense. Great Tao formed behind him, transforming into various forms, but all of them were filled with might. This old man was stronger than old demon blood shadow, Ling Han thought. Though he could no longer compare the strength of their auras, he felt that Alchemist Ziqing was stronger. He smiled and said, "I've been wronged." "Oh, you hit my alchemy apprentice, and you actually say that you've been wronged?" Alchemist Ziqing couldn't help but laugh in anger. Ling Han was calm and composed. If Alchemist Ziqing really wanted to punish him, there was no need to waste words with him. For a 4-star alchemist, no matter how freakish Ling Han was, he was only a severing mundane tier, a 1-star alchemist. There was no need to take him seriously. Killing him was a matter of a single thought. But now, the other party had so much to say, and added with the fact that Ling Han already had some suspicions, he was naturally more certain. He said, "I've indeed been wronged, and I'm also very aggrieved and angry." "Heh, you're becoming more and more impudent," Alchemist Ziqing said with a sneer. Ling Han was neither servile nor overbearing, and continued, "A mere alchemy apprentice actually dares to shout at a 1-star alchemist? Are there any rules? To say nothing of the other 1-star alchemists. Even the 2-star alchemists and 3-star alchemists are silent, as if they're used to it. I don't think that's right." "Oh, so this is the reason you hit my alchemy apprentice?" Alchemist Ziqing asked calmly, an unfathomable expression on his face. Ling Han smiled and said, "Exactly. You're truly audacious. Don't you know that there's a saying that goes, even if you want to beat a dog, you must first look at its master?" Alchemist Ziqing said in a menacing voice. A terrifying killing intent surfaced on his face, and it was as if he had suddenly transformed into an Azura demon king. He lightly slapped the table. Although there was no sound, Ling Han's heart thumped as if the world had collapsed. This was the might of the ascending origin tier. Their every action could affect the hearts of others. "Since you're a talent, I'll be merciful and give you a chance." Alchemist Ziqing paused for a moment before saying, "If you immediately kowtow and apologize to my alchemy apprentice, I can spare your life." Ling Han said without the slightest hesitation, "A scholar can be killed, but not humiliated. Besides, I didn't do anything wrong, so why should I apologize? Haha, I've lived for trillions of years, but this is the first time I've seen such an ignorant kid. Since you're so audacious and arrogant, then you can die with this dignity of yours." Alchemist Ziqing moved, and his palm pressed down. Boom! It transformed into a massive flaming hand that was inscribed with patterns of the Great Tao. To a severing mundane tier, just looking at this palm strike would cause boundless terror to well up in their hearts, to say nothing of blocking it. It wasn't impossible for those who were more timid to be scared out of their wits. Moreover, this palm strike was very slow, as if it wanted to instill boundless terror in Ling Han before taking his life. Ling Han stood as straight as a sword with his hands clasped behind his back. If this palm strike really landed, he definitely wouldn't be able to hide into the Black Tower in time. However, he was making a huge gamble. He was gambling on his understanding of Alchemist Ziqing. If he lost this gamble, the price would be his life. In fact, with the Black Tower in hand, Ling Han didn't need to gamble. As long as he didn't encounter a celestial king, he would be completely safe once he entered the Black Tower. However, as his cultivation level became higher and higher, he increasingly didn't want to rely on the Black Tower. At least, it wasn't a situation where there was no solution. "Kneel and beg for mercy, and you'll still have a sliver of a chance to live," Alchemist Ziqing said. His voice rumbled like thunder, and it was so deafening that one's ears felt like they were about to explode. Furthermore, his voice was aimed directly at Ling Han's Tao heart, and it carried with it a supreme pressure. Ling Han didn't even need to speak, and he still stood proudly. Boom! The palm strike landed, and the entire 7th peak trembled a few times. A terrifying might swept over, and Ling Han's figure reappeared. However, he wasn't injured in the slightest. This wasn't because Ling Han was nature-defying and could even withstand the attack of an ascending origin tier elite. Rather, when the attack landed, it just so happened to avoid him. Otherwise, not only would he be a dead man now, but he would also be a dead man whose bones wouldn't even be found. Ha ha ha. Alchemist Zicheng laughed loudly. The shocking killing intent that he was exuding had already been completely swept away, and his laughter was extremely joyous. It was as if his mood had suddenly improved to the extreme. Though a cold sweat had already formed on Ling Han's back, there was no change in his expression. He knew that he had gambled correctly. Even if he had gambled wrongly, it wasn't that he didn't have a way out. The indestructible Heaven's Scroll could allow him to rise from the ashes, and it could give him another chance. Moreover, it just so happened that he could dispel the black murderous curse. However, if he didn't have to use this kind of rebirth opportunity, it was best not to. This wasn't something that could be used limitlessly. Rather, it was pitifully rare. As his cultivation level increased, he would only be able to use it once or twice more. Moreover, he also viewed the black murderous curse as a form of training, so he didn't want to dispel it immediately. "Brat, you're really very courageous," Alchemist Zicheng said. Ling Han became humble instead. He clasped his hands and said, "Thank you, Senior, for sparing my life." An expression of admiration appeared on Alchemist Zicheng's face. A person who only knew how to act arrogantly wouldn't have a future. However, Ling Han knew when to yield and when to stand tall. When he needed to be forceful, he was incredibly forceful. And when he needed to be respectful, he didn't lose his etiquette. This made Alchemist Zicheng extremely satisfied. After waiting for so many years, he had finally found a talent that he was willing to accept. "Are you sure that I won't kill you?" Alchemist Zicheng asked. Ling Han smiled and said, "I'm 70 to 80% sure. However, it's not 100% sure. Moreover, what if you're wrong?" Alchemist Zicheng asked. Ling Han still maintained his smile and said, 70 to 80% sure. It's already worth a gamble. He naturally wouldn't say that he could rise from the ashes again. Even if he was wrong, there would still be a sliver of a chance to salvage the situation. Brat. Alchemist Zicheng's eyebrows and beard twitched. He appeared to be very excited, and it was as if he was extremely happy. He waved his hand, and his expression became incredibly amiable. "Brat, come sit here." Ling Han walked over and sat across from Alchemist Zicheng. He placed his hands on his knees, appearing to be extremely respectful. Alchemist Zicheng couldn't help but feel even more satisfied. His eyes were filled with admiration, and he smiled as he said, "Do you think that I'm the kind of person who would allow those around me to strut around and do whatever they want?" Ling Han told the truth and said, "In the beginning, I didn't understand Senior. However, when I saw Alchemy Apprentice Mo's arrogance and despotic behavior, I indeed thought that Senior was an extremely protective person. However, when I taught Alchemy Apprentice Mo a lesson, it wasn't the law enforcement team that arrived. Instead, it was Alchemy Apprentice Mo. At that time, I knew that Senior definitely wasn't such a person." Haha. Alchemist Zicheng's laughter became even more carefree. "Then tell me, why did I allow little Mo to do whatever he wanted? In fact, I even allowed everyone to think that I was such a person." Chapter 1892. Alchemist Zicheng was very satisfied with the expression on Ling Han's face. This was exactly what he had hoped for. Only when Ling Han was interested would he be able to teach him. Otherwise, forcefully forcing him to drink water would not be effective. "I want to know why," Alchemist Zicheng said with a smile. "Yes." Ling Han nodded vigorously. Alchemist Zicheng nodded and said, "This is known as spirit refinement. It interweaves the source power of heaven and earth within the celestial pill with the great Tao in order to increase the quality of the alchemical pill. Spirit refinement could be performed more than once. Every additional spirit refinement would increase the efficacy of the immortal pill by a level. Only a single spirit enhancement is called first refinement, and so on. There are also second refinement, third refinement, and fourth refinement." He paused for a moment, then said, "As far as I know, spirit refinement can be performed 9 times. However, the spirit refinement gets more and more difficult every time. Furthermore, if the refinement fails, the pill will be useless. The strength of an alchemist is not determined by the number of stars they have. It also depends on how many times they perform spirit enhancements. Only those who perform spirit enhancements 5 times or more are qualified to be called grandmasters. Ling Han couldn't help but be curious. How many times can senior refine? Alchemist Zicheng faltered slightly and said, different grades of alchemical pills have different levels of difficulty in spirit refinement. Furthermore, it's not certain that a 1-star alchemical pill is better at spirit refinement than a 4-star alchemical pill. For example, that Tao regulating pill you obtained was refined 7 times by me. And if it were some 3-star alchemists, then 3rd refinement or 4th refinement would be the limit. My limit is the 7th refinement. The 7th refinement could raise the grade of a medicinal pill 7 times. After the 7th refinement, even if it was originally a low-grade medicinal pill, its effects would far surpass that of a top-grade medicinal pill. Do you want to learn? Alchemist Zicheng looked at Ling Han with a smile, his eyes filled with anticipation. Teaching an outstanding disciple, or even a disciple that surpassed his own, was also a great sense of accomplishment for him. Yes, Ling Han immediately nodded. However, a proud expression appeared on Alchemist Zicheng's face, and he said, however, what right do you have to become my disciple and have me personally guide you? This, Ling Han tried hard to think. Talent in martial art was definitely not worth mentioning. The other party was an alchemist, so he would definitely not care about his talent in martial art. But in terms of alchemy ability, he was practically standing at the pinnacle of alchemy. Did he need to care about him? He scratched his head. Could it be that he had the confidence to become a 5-star alchemist and bring glory to Alchemist Zicheng? Being able to nurture a 5-star alchemist was naturally a great honor for the master. Unfortunately, just like how no one could guarantee that they could become a celestial king, it was naturally the same for 5-star alchemists. Then let me ask you in another way. Alchemist Zicheng naturally wouldn't reject Ling Han. Otherwise, he wouldn't have spoken so much with Ling Han. The reason why he did that was to give Ling Han a warning, telling him that he shouldn't be too arrogant and complacent. Why do you want to learn alchemy? Why learn alchemy? Ling Han thought about it and realized that he had quite a lot to pursue. After he refined the pill, he could use it for himself, or he could give it to the people around him. He could also use it to make friends, sell it, or exchange it for some special items. After all, some items were not for sale and could only be exchanged. Ling Han thought for a long while, and then thought of all the things that Alchemist Zicheng had done before, and finally said, to earn money. This wasn't completely to cater to Alchemist Zicheng. He indeed needed large amounts of star stones to exchange for godly metal, so that he could improve the quality of his divine demon sword and advance it to celestial level. This became a heavy burden for him, and it was also the greatest source of motivation for him to earn money. Alchemist Zicheng couldn't help but feel elated. He suddenly clapped his hands and laughed loudly, saying, well said, well said. Pay, what noble ideals. What revitalization of alchemy. Pay, when I first learned alchemy, it was because I was so poor. Haha, I had no choice but to find a job to support myself. Who would have thought that I was actually made for this? I'll take you as my disciple. Ling Han couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. This great alchemist was really, how to put it, even though he was vulgar in a way that resonated with him. Alchemist Zicheng waved him over and said, brat, hurry up and acknowledge your master. Though Ling Han believed that he was qualified to become a 5-star alchemist in the future, who knew how many obstacles he would have to face on this path? Alchemy was actually just like martial art. The higher one advanced, the more difficult it would be. No, it would be countless times more difficult. How many cultivators were there in the celestial realm? But how many alchemists were there? At least, there were celestial kings in the eastern celestial realm, and there were even 8th heaven tier ones. However, were there 5-star alchemists? At least tens of billions of years ago, there had been a gap. A 4-star alchemist was enough to become his master. More importantly, Alchemist Zicheng was also to Ling Han's liking. They were like a pair of turtles, and they liked each other. Disciple Ling Han pays his respects to Master. Ling Han knelt down and paid his respects to Alchemist Zicheng. Alchemist Zicheng pulled over a chair and sat down. After receiving Ling Han's 3 bows and 9 kowtows, he gladly helped Ling Han up and said, good disciple, you are Master's 4th disciple, but also my only disciple at present." A look of reminiscence appeared on his face, and he said, "Those 3 senior brothers of yours are all 4-star alchemists now. Though their level of spirit refinement is still inferior to Master's, they are not far behind. However, all of them have withdrawn from the sect now." Ling Han was slightly surprised and he asked, why? Were they ungrateful? He was slightly annoyed. This was one of the things that he hated the most. Alchemist Zicheng shook his head and said, "If they follow me, they will only reach Master's level at most. They will stop at 4-star alchemist, and if they want to become 5-star alchemists, they will have to break free from Master's shadow and forge their own path." This was something that both Master and disciple had tacitly agreed on. The 3 disciples had established their own sect, and were trying to establish their own system of alchemy to become 5-star alchemists. "Brat, if you can't break free from the norm, Master will also expel you from the sect in the future," Alchemist Zicheng said solemnly. Ling Han thought for a moment, and then said, "Disciple will definitely work hard, and not let Master expel me." Alchemist Zicheng laughed loudly. He indeed liked Ling Han very much, and that was why he had specially taken him as a disciple. Otherwise, it had already been several tens of billions of years since he had taken a new disciple. However, could Ling Han really surpass the limit of a 4-star alchemist and advance to become a 5-star alchemist? Alchemist Zicheng did not dare to say with certainty. He could only say that Ling Han had a sliver of a chance. "The first mission that Master will give you is to ascend to the position of Holy Sun," he said with a serious expression. "I can only nominate you. Whether or not you can obtain the agreement of the other 2 4-star alchemists will depend on your performance. Master wants you to reach the first refinement within a year." A year. This was a very harsh requirement. Even if he had the time cultivation chamber to accelerate time by 100 times, that would only be 100 years. Reaching the first refinement was practically an impossible task. However, if Ling Han wanted to become a 5-star alchemist, he would have to overcome all impossibilities. Chapter 1893. Afterwards, Alchemist Zicheng told Ling Han many things about spirit refinement, and of course, the other 2 4-star alchemists in Alchemy City. One was called Heaven Heart, and he was very special, because he was not born of his parents, nor was he nurtured by heaven and earth, and his original form was a celestial pill. The exact time could not be determined, but it was very likely an epoch ago. At that time, there was still a 5-star alchemist in Alchemy City, and he had refined 11 celestial pills in total in his life, and one of them was the Heaven Heart Tao Seeking Pill. This pill was the last celestial pill that the 5-star alchemist had refined, and it was also the culmination of this alchemist's great accomplishments. It was this 5-star alchemist's proudest work, and thus he always kept it by his side. As time passed, this celestial pill actually slowly gained sentience, developed intelligence, and started life. Thus, there was the current alchemist Heaven Heart. Because his life form was completely different, Alchemist Heaven Heart's personality was also very different. He focused all his attention on alchemy, wanting to create more of his kind, so that he would no longer be lonely. The other 4-star alchemist was called Chu Yi, an old man who loved wine as much as his life, and liked to travel. It was very likely that he was the only person in the world who had traveled through the entire Eastern Celestial Realm. It was said that this old man could casually give away the celestial pills he refined for wine. Thus, Chu Yi almost never appeared in Alchemy City, and would only occasionally return once every few thousand or tens of thousands of years. It was precisely because of this that Alchemist Zicheng could hold sole authority, and also caused a mere alchemy apprentice Mo to become so arrogant, almost riding over the heads of all the holy sons and holy daughters. However, to establish a new holy son, This was indeed very important, and alchemist Zicheng could not make a decision on his own. He had to obtain the agreement of the other two old companions. Alchemist Heavenheart was easy. He was in Alchemy City, but Grandmaster Chu Yi had run off to who knew where. Even if there was a transmission talisman that could immediately send news over, with how big the celestial realm was, who knew how long it would take for him to return? Thus, Alchemist Zicheng gave Ling Han a time limit of 1 year. In reality, this was very generous. There was basically no way that Grandmaster Chu Yi would rush back in such a short time. There were 2 reasons why Grandmaster Zicheng would make such a request. Firstly, it was to put pressure on Ling Han, and secondly, Alchemy City had a new holy sun, so they had to invite all the major forces of the world to come and offer their congratulations. Because Grandmaster Zicheng was so fond of him, Ling Han naturally could no longer conceal the truth. He revealed that he had once killed the holy sons and heiresses of 2 celestial king tier forces. Alchemist Zicheng's expression instantly became extremely interesting. Sure enough, this little disciple is really a troublemaker. He even dared to kill the holy son and female successor of a celestial king clan. Not only was this extremely audacious, it also represented absolute strength. No wonder even Zhao Qingfeng was defeated. It's fine. The old man gritted his teeth. Although he said it was fine, the veins on his forehead were throbbing. Alchemy City was a 4-star force, and only had ascending origin tier elites. Even if alchemists had a transcendent status, and could barely be regarded as a celestial king tier force, it was still just barely. It could not compare to a true 5-star force. If Ling Han had only beaten up their heiress, or even severely wounded them, then Alchemy City would compensate them a little. On behalf of the alchemist, the 2 celestial king tier forces would not be so overbearing. But now, Ling Han had killed their most outstanding heir. Whether this was for the sake of face or profit, there was no reason for the 2 celestial king tier forces to let the matter rest. Thankfully, you have the rock palace behind you. Grandmaster Zicheng breathed a sigh of relief. I once went to the Western Celestial Realm in the past, wanting to visit a great teacher to break through to 5-star, so I have some understanding of this rock palace. Even in the Western Celestial Realm, there are a limited number of 9th Heaven Celestial King tier forces. They are true Overlord-level forces. With the reputation of the rock palace, and added with my mediation, I should be able to settle this matter. After all, the Zai clan and Thundercloud Palace are only 1st Heaven Celestial King tier forces. When he said the last sentence, a hint of arrogance appeared on Alchemist Zicheng's face. Grandmaster Zicheng was probably the only ascending origin tier that dared to say that a 1-star Celestial King tier was only. This kind of pride and arrogance was definitely not something that any holy son or holy daughter could compare to. Ling Han nodded and said, I have caused trouble for Master. Grandmaster Zicheng's expression was strange, and he said, I have a feeling that you will cause even more trouble in the future. Sigh. I really don't know whether taking you as a disciple will bring glory or destruction to Alchemy City. To say such words in front of Ling Han, it could be seen that Grandmaster Zicheng really regarded Ling Han as one of his own, and did not try to avoid suspicion in the slightest. Ling Han was actually rendered speechless. He had a halo of trouble, and this had already been proven more than once. To say nothing of the distant, he had just defeated Zhao Qingfeng. And what if this attracted the attention of Yan Xianlu? And he said that he wanted to take him as a subordinate? He definitely would not agree. Then, wouldn't he be clashing with Yan Xianlu again? However, he really wanted to spar with Yan Xianlu. Just how powerful was this monarch tier that had been born on the celestial path, and was hailed as a supreme monarch tier? Of course, it definitely was not now. Yan Xianlu should already be a 5th severance, and if he encountered him now, he would definitely be beaten viciously. Under the refinement of regulations, it would be useless no matter how strong his godly bones were. Thus, my current target is first refinement and the peak stage of the 4th severance, and then push open the door to the 5th severance, Ling Han said in his mind. He mentioned the natural peach seal to Grandmaster Zicheng. You actually want to break through to the 5th severance? Grandmaster Zicheng was really given a fright this time. Defeating Zhao Qingfeng was indeed proof of Ling Han's strength and freakish talent. But the fifth severance, that was too illusory. In fact, it was only a legend, and no one could achieve it at all. Was this disciple going to excel in both alchemy and martial arts, and reach the peak stage? The old man thought for a moment, and then said, "All right, as long as you can become a holy son, Master will gift the natural peach seal to you." Thankfully, he was the master of Alchemy City now. Otherwise, he wouldn't dare to pat his chest and make such a promise. Ling Han showed a bashful smile and said, "Master, can you give me two?" Grandmaster Zicheng glared at him. "What do you want two for? Do you want to use one to take the other?" My wife also wants one," Ling Han said, rubbing his hands together. Grandmaster Zicheng was instantly dumbfounded. There was still a fifth severance. This was a legend. What was a legend? A legend was something that had only been heard of, and could never be achieved. But now, not only did Ling Han want to achieve the fifth severance, but his wife also wanted to achieve the fifth severance. Could it be that he had concocted alchemical pills for too long, and had become stupid? Or was it that he had not left for too long, and was too ill-informed? No, he had to drink a bottle of 820 million years old wine to calm his nerves. We'll talk about everything after you become a holy son. If you succeed, this will be a reward from Master. In the end, Grandmaster Zicheng still gritted his teeth and agreed. Though he was an alchemist, he really wanted to witness the birth of a fifth severance monarch tier. What more when there were two? And both of them had a deep relationship with him. Chapter 1894. After obtaining Alchemist Zicheng's guarantee, Ling Han naturally felt much more assured. Otherwise, after he and the Empress reached the peak stage of the fourth severance, they would have to suppress their cultivation, unable to advance even an inch. It had only been a year, and he wanted to succeed in spirit refinement and reach the peak stage of the fourth severance. This was a little difficult. However, only with difficulty would it be challenging, and only then would it be interesting. Ling Han was filled with ambition, and he asked Alchemist Zicheng for guidance on the details of spirit refinement. For immortals, rest was almost unnecessary. Thus, the master and disciple, one taught seriously, while the other studied attentively. They completely forgot about the time. Thankfully, they were in the pill concocting chamber, which allowed time to accelerate. Half a year later, by the time Ling Han had mastered the art of spirit enhancement, only 2 days had passed in the outside world. Master leads the way, but cultivation depends on oneself. If there's anything you don't understand, you can come and ask Master. However, if you want to surpass Master, then it's best that you develop the ability to think independently now. If you can solve your own problems, then solve them yourself. This was Grandmaster Zicheng's experience. His first disciple was also a prodigy of alchemy, and he viewed him as a precious treasure. If there was anything he didn't understand, he would immediately teach him and dispel his doubts. However, in the end, this disciple had reached the lowest heights. When he was teaching the last 2 disciples, Grandmaster Zicheng changed slightly. He guided them to solve problems independently, but he still interfered too much. Although these 2 disciples had surpassed his eldest disciple, they were still unable to surpass his limits. Therefore, Ling Han had to start from the beginning and train him to use his own brain to think, instead of looking for him whenever he encountered a problem. Ling Han bade farewell to Alchemist Zicheng, left the manor, and returned to the 4th level. Outsiders were not allowed to stay on the 5th level. That was the rule. Unless Ling Han decided not to be an apprentice, and instead became an alchemy apprentice, he would be allowed to stay on the mountain. It was unknown who had set this rule. In any case, this rule had existed for innumerable years, and even Alchemist Zicheng had to abide by it. Ling Han did not take it to heart. In any case, in the 4th floor of the Alchemist Hall, the Alchemy Room also had a 100x acceleration effect, so it would not affect his alchemy. Moreover, he usually spent most of his time comprehending under the reincarnation tree, so he was even less affected. He walked to the door and opened it with a creak. Alchemy apprentice Mo was currently standing guard at the entrance. Without Alchemist Zicheng's permission, he didn't dare to enter. Therefore, outsiders thought that alchemy apprentice Mo was very impressive, but in reality he was from the same sect. It was just that there were no outsiders here, so no one could see alchemy apprentice Mo's appearance. Otherwise, they would definitely not be so afraid of him. Alchemy apprentice Mo stared at Ling Han, as if he had seen a ghost. His eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. What happened? How did Ling Han walk out of there unscathed? This brat had been summoned twice by Grandmaster Zicheng. The first time, he had directly left, and though he had gone the second time, he had also made Grandmaster Zicheng wait for a very long time. In his mind, Ling Han had definitely been dismembered, and his bones ground into dust. But am I hallucinating now? I must be hallucinating. Ling Han smiled and waved his hand in front of him. Hey, this is not an illusion. Impossible. Alchemy apprentice Mo jumped 10 meters into the air, as if someone had stepped on his tail. His face was filled with terror as he pointed at Ling Han and said, "No, no, no, this must be my inner demon. You can't be a living person." Pa! Ling Han slapped him across the face, and calmly said, "Will my inner demon slap you?" "No, this is a test of my inner demon." Alchemy apprentice Mo's eyes were resolute, yet his expression was dazed. Pa pa pa! Ling Han slapped him a few times in succession, yet alchemy apprentice Mo remained unperturbed. His determination was truly admirable. He had been scared out of his wits. Ling Han stroked his chin. Forget it, he couldn't be bothered to deal with a minor character like this. He swaggered off, and alchemy apprentice Mo wore a dazed expression as he repeatedly said, "This is my inner demon, this is my inner demon." Ling Han returned to the 4th level, and once again went to the alchemist's pavilion. He stayed there calmly and inconspicuously. However, in the outside world this caused a huge uproar. He had slapped alchemy apprentice Mo, and met with alchemist Zicheng. Yet he had actually returned as if nothing had happened. This was far too inconceivable. There were many intelligent people, and they immediately came to a conclusion. Alchemist Zicheng greatly admired Ling Han, and that was why he had spared his disrespectful actions. Since that was the case, why didn't everyone hurry up and make a move? The various great clans all sent out important lobbyists, wanting to recruit Ling Han. This was a rising star of alchemy, and his future prospects were indescribably bright. If they could tie him to their side, they would definitely be glorious for countless generations. Unfortunately, they couldn't see Ling Han at all. Ling Han had already started cultivating in seclusion. Meanwhile, Lu Xianming, Qin Guyu, and the others all wore gloomy expressions. Ling Han's performance was far too freakish. Not only was he exceptional in both alchemy and martial arts, but he had also reached the pinnacle in both aspects. This caused them to be incredibly wary of him. As Ling Han's martial art level rose, would they still be able to kill him in the future? Thus, they had to make their move as soon as possible. However, Ling Han was in the alchemist pavilion. If he could still be assassinated, what was the point of the alchemist pavilion? Thus, they could only wait silently. They still didn't know that Ling Han had already been taken as a disciple by alchemist Zicheng. Otherwise, they would either completely lose their fighting spirit, or take the risk and stake everything on a single throw. Under the reincarnation tree, Ling Han was currently digesting the spirit refinement technique that alchemist Zicheng had taught him. Every branch of alchemists had their own unique spirit refinement technique. The wisdom of the founding ancestors was truly admirable. With their own understanding of celestial medicines and great Tao, they had forcibly improved the quality of celestial pills. It was said that through a few spirit refinements, one could even refine a defective pill into a genuine pill. Ling Han didn't have any foundation now, so he could only study. However, if he only studied, he couldn't possibly surpass the peak of alchemist Zicheng's achievements. At most, he could only reach the same level. Back then, alchemist Zicheng had surpassed his master's limit. Though he was still a 4-star alchemist, he had advanced from the 6th refinement to the 7th refinement. It was also said that only by reaching the 9th refinement could one push open the door to becoming a 5-star alchemist. Conversely, spirit refinement was incredibly important. Ling Han wasn't in a hurry to begin. Instead, He painstakingly meditated for a whole 10,000 years before finally stopping. 10,000 years under the reincarnation tree was equivalent to 100 days in the outside world. This was a little long. The Empress was also cultivating. She was filled with confidence in Ling Han, and was certain that he would definitely obtain the natural peach seal. Thus, her mission was to reach the peak stage of the fourth severance as soon as possible, and then refine the heavenly Dao Jade to open up her path to the Emperor tier. Meanwhile, the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden could only wait for an opportunity to break through to the severing mundane tier. However, there were 2 infants in the Black Tower, which gave her considerable comfort, and she wouldn't feel bored. These were spiritual infants born from the source power of heaven and earth. They were innately close to Tao, and when they grew up, they would definitely become kings among kings. Thus, the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was in high spirits. She herself couldn't possibly achieve great accomplishments, but nurturing 2 outstanding individuals still gave her a great sense of accomplishment. Ling Han also let her be. He planned to take these 2 children as disciples when they were a little older. Though this master of his was often a hands-off shopkeeper, taking disciples was a very fun thing. The Empress continued to cultivate in seclusion, while the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden brought the 2 children out for a breather. Ling Han immersed himself in the alchemy chamber and began his difficult path of breaking through to the first refinement. Chapter 1896. As long as they ruthlessly humiliated Ling Han in public, making him unable to back down, would alchemist Zicheng still have the face to push Ling Han to the position of Holy Son? Wasn't he afraid of the repercussions? Though this would also displease alchemist Zicheng and the others. If they allowed Ling Han to become the Holy Son, they could only watch as Ling Han ascended to the position of chairperson. Thus, they had to take a gamble. In the alchemy chamber, Ling Han was completely focused. Very quickly, another half a year had passed. He looked nervous and pulled an alchemical pill towards him. 9 heavens flames spewed out, and boom, it wrapped around the alchemical pill. He had always failed at this step. The 9 heavens flame that he spat out was too excessive, directly burning the celestial pill to ashes. After many failures, and added with innumerable deductions this time, he was sure that he would definitely succeed. Boom! The 9 heavens flame blazed, and the celestial pill shone brightly. It was as if the essence within had been drawn out, and it intertwined with the Tao of heaven and earth, forming some kind of indescribable change. Success! Ling Han suddenly laughed loudly. It really hadn't been easy, but he had finally succeeded, comprehending under the reincarnation tree. Even if he had comprehended for 10,000 years, that was only in his mental state. In reality, the flow of time for his physical body was still the same as in reality. But in the time cultivation chamber, it was different. His divine sense and physical body had both passed the same amount of time. He had used 1.5 years in reality to reach the first refinement, but in reality, his body had truly passed 150 years. This was really long. Thankfully, he had finally succeeded. Ling Han looked at the celestial pill in his hand. There was a faint golden line on its surface. Even if it was the same first refinement, there was a difference. The golden line on his was slightly lighter, and was far from comparable to Grandmaster Zicheng's. He couldn't help but sigh. Old Ginger was spicier. He couldn't compare, really couldn't compare. If Grandmaster Zicheng heard his complaints, he would definitely be so angry that his beard would twitch. He had immersed himself in alchemy for how many years? If Ling Han caught up to him in a short period of time, then what the hell was he going to do? On the other hand, Ling Han had already reached this level on his first successful spirit refinement. This was too astonishing. Even Grandmaster Zicheng couldn't compare in the past. What else do you want? Ling Han pushed open the door and came to his own residence. He saw that the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was currently in the courtyard with 2 naked children. This was a pair of extremely mischievous troublemakers, and they just so happened to be a man and a woman. They were both wearing red undergarments, and they were playing around the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. When they discovered that Ling Han had pushed open the door and entered, they immediately shrunk behind the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. Then they poked their heads out and looked around. They were the last two people of the Garuru tribe. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. What, you don't recognize me? Although these two children were still infants at that time, their talent was too extraordinary. As long as they glanced at Ling Han, he would definitely remember them. Sure enough, after a while, the two children immediately flew out and hugged one of Ling Han's legs, calling out, "Godfather! When did I become your godfather?" The heavenly phoenix divine maiden couldn't help but smile, and said, "Layer and you are miss you every day." This boy was called Shirley, and the girl was called Shiryu, because they had both jumped out from rocks. Ling Han shook his legs, but the two children stuck to him like sticky candy. No matter how he shook, he couldn't loosen them. He could only say, "Let go first." No. The two kids hugged each other tightly. In the end, it was the heavenly phoenix divine maiden who spoke, and carried the two children over. Ling Han and the heavenly phoenix divine maiden talked for a while. With the two children present, they couldn't be too intimate, which made the heavenly phoenix divine maiden's eyes sad. Ling Han's heart swayed, and he moved closer and said, "I'll come find you at night." "Godmother, why would Godfather come find you at night?" Shirley was a little mischievous. "You're so stupid. Godfather obviously has to play kissing with Godmother," Shiryu said in an old-fashioned manner. "Oh," Shirley nodded, and then looked confused. "What's kissing? You don't even know kissing, stupid." Shiryu's expression was full of disdain. Children nowadays. Ling Han sighed, and kissed the heavenly phoenix divine maiden's red lips lightly, and then left. He came to the 5th level, and reported the good news to Alchemist Zicheng. Alchemist Zicheng was moved and said, "Success." Although Ling Han was half a year late, this was still an astonishing achievement. At least it was better than what he had done in the past. Ling Han nodded, and handed over the alchemical pill, with a successful spirit refinement. "Please have a look, master." Alchemist Zicheng received it, and he only glanced at it, and his face instantly shuddered. "This is the alchemical pill from your first successful spirit refinement?" he asked. Ling Han nodded and said, "It can't compare to what master has refined. I've let down master's love." He was slightly embarrassed and really ashamed. Alchemist Zicheng's expression was strange. He endured for a long time, and then said, It's good that you know your shortcomings. Although your talent is not low, you must not be arrogant. Only then will you have a chance to reach the peak of alchemy." Ling Han nodded, and accepted this humbly. Seeing Ling Han's slightly disappointed expression, Alchemist Zicheng almost blurted out, "You're a fucking super prodigy." Although Ling Han's current performance was indeed inferior to his, who was he? He was a 4-star alchemist, and a 7th refinement at that? If he could reach my level now, would there still be any justice in this world? Alchemist Zicheng was afraid that Ling Han would be too proud if he told the truth. Since Ling Han thought that his own level was not very high, he would just go along with his words. However, seeing Ling Han's disappointed expression, he couldn't bear to see him like this. He was conflicted, too fucking conflicted. As it turned out, taking a super prodigy as a disciple also had all kinds of troubles. Of course, this kind of trouble was blissful to Alchemist Zicheng. He wished that Ling Han could be a little more talented, so that he could be a little more troubled. 10 days from now, it will be the day you are officially crowned as a holy son. However, this is also a test. At that time, anyone can question your alchemy level, and you will inevitably have to refine pills. You should rest well in these few days and recover to your peak condition, Alchemist Zicheng said. Ling Han nodded and said, "I understand." It just so happened that he had been separated from his wife for so long, so it was time for him to do his best. Alchemist Zicheng waved his hand and said, "Go." Ling Han retreated from the manor, and a smile instantly appeared on Alchemist Zicheng's face. Then, the smile on his face became wider and wider, and he couldn't help but laugh heartily, startling countless birds in the mountains. Awesome, too awesome. It's even more awesome than earning 100 billion star stones. He was truly extremely satisfied with this disciple of his. Unfortunately, for the sake of Ling Han's future, he had to endure it. He couldn't praise Ling Han, and this made him feel slightly regretful. However, When Ling Han ascended to the position of a holy son, his outstanding talent would be the focus of everyone's attention, and he would become the most dazzling star. With such an excellent disciple, what more could I ask for? He sighed ruefully, his heart filled with joy. Reading on a mobile phone was even more refreshing. Chapter 1897. It was only 10 days, so naturally it passed in a flash. Ling Han had been keeping a low profile for the past few days, because he had been perfecting his spirit cultivation technique. He had only succeeded in the first refinement, but he was still far from perfection. A medicinal pill could only perform a 9-fold spirit enhancement. Generally speaking, a 3-fold or 4-fold spirit enhancement was already very, very impressive. Therefore, the quality of each spirit enhancement was very important. 2 pill refiners of different standards performed spirit refinement on the same immortal pill at the same time. Both of them performed the 3rd refinement, but the final results could be as different as heaven and earth. Ling Han had to work hard to reach the highest level of the 1st refinement. Although alchemist Zicheng had said that the increase in the level of an alchemist would also affect the level of spirit refinement, since it was temporarily impossible for him to become a 2-star alchemist, there was no harm in spending some effort on spirit refinement. From 1 star to 2 star, the complexity of alchemy was at least 100 times higher. One was for severing mundane tier, and the other was for dividing soul tier. So could they be of the same level? Alchemist Zicheng was already very optimistic in his estimation. No matter what, Ling Han would have to wait another 1 million or so years before he could become a 2-star alchemist. Moreover, this was after considering the fact that he had entered the time cultivation room. However, alchemist Zicheng didn't know that Ling Han also had a reincarnation tree. The effects of a reincarnation tree on comprehending Tao were truly astonishing. But even so, it would still take several thousand years for Ling Han to become a 2-star alchemist. Ling Han had previously derived the concoction process of a 2-star alchemist, but he was forced to stop after operating it for less than 1/10,000th of the process. The regulations of heaven and earth involved in this were too complicated. Though severing mundane tiers could refine it, they would need to spend an endless amount of time. Moreover, even after spending so much time, he could only refine a 2-star pill. Fortunately, one's lifespan was unlimited after advancing into the severing mundane tier. Otherwise, it was possible that a 2-star alchemist would only be able to refine a pitifully few types of alchemical pills, even at death's door. Ling Han was not greedy, and did not try to increase the number of 1-star immortal pills he could concoct. Instead, he focused his attention on spirit enhancement. Spirit refinement was about better understanding the composition of immortal medicines and pills, as well as the workings of the great Tao of heaven and earth. In reality, everything could be achieved. In the ancient realm, there were people who had reached the Tao through alchemy, so it was naturally possible in the celestial realm as well. For example, Grandmaster Zicheng, when he had become a 1-star alchemist, he had only been in the severing mundane tier. After that, he had no time to bother with cultivation, and had instead been continuously refining alchemical pills. However, as he continued to cultivate, he naturally reached the peak stage of the 4th severance. Then, he successfully divided his soul, established an immortal palace, and advanced to the ascending origin tier. All paths lead to the same destination. Therefore, Ling Han was very calm. Alchemy was also a part of cultivation. 10 days later, the Empress came out of seclusion. It was not because she had reached the peak stage of the 4th severance, but rather because today was Ling Han's big day. So she naturally had to cheer for her beloved husband. Early in the morning, Ling Han brought the 2 women with him and set off. Bewitching Maiden Ro also came uninvited, and shamelessly pretended to be Ling Han's friend. This Ling Han was going to become the holy son of Alchemy City, so wouldn't he be able to give away celestial pills as he pleased in the future? For a shrewd bewitching maiden like her, she naturally knew that she had to form a good relationship with Ling Han now. In truth, Ling Han really did not want to get too close to her. Firstly, this bewitching maiden was indeed very charming, and secondly, The Empress was constantly hinting to him to accept this 9 revolutions charm physique, which caused him to resist from the bottom of his heart. But the great bewitching maiden was all smiles. As the saying went, it was hard to hit a smiling face, so it was difficult to chase her away. Meanwhile, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden was carrying Shirley and Shiryu. These 2 naughty children were practically brats, and incredibly mischievous. They sized up bewitching maiden Ro, and made all kinds of experienced comments, causing Ling Han to be very speechless. Where had these 2 brats learned all this? These 2 brats were not afraid of heaven or earth, and the only thing they were afraid of was the Empress. It was as if the Empress' exquisite beauty and honor would even affect them. The coronation ceremony was held on the 4th level, so those that could come here all had powerful backgrounds. No matter what, they had to have the background of a 3-star force. Ling Han's eyes swept over, and he saw a few familiar faces, like Fu Gaoyan, Fu Tonghai, Situ Tang and Xiang Yan. It should be known that the Fu clan was really far away from this place. Even if they used a warship to travel, they definitely could not reach this place without at least half a year's time. But now that they had come, it could be seen just how great the prestige of Alchemy City was. Coming here might not necessarily make Alchemy City feel indebted, but if they did not come, what if someone bore a grudge against them? The alchemists of the world, or at least the alchemists of the Eastern Celestial Realm, all viewed Alchemy City as their holy land, their totem. As long as Alchemy City called upon them, the alchemists of the world would definitely listen and obey. Thus, this 4-star force could just barely rival 5-star forces. However, when Fu Gaoyan and the others arrived at Ling Han, their mouths were all wide open. This was especially so for Fu Xiaoyan, whose beautiful eyes were almost round. Situ Xiaojin, however, did not show any surprise. She only muttered, "If this guy's ass hadn't been raped, how could he have climbed to this position?" Although they had heard that the new holy son of Alchemy City was called Ling Han, they definitely could not connect the 2 Ling Hans to each other. A person who had been hunted had suddenly become the holy son of an alchemy holy land? Who could believe this? When they saw Ling Han's familiar face, they instantly felt as if they were in a dream. They felt that this was far too surreal, far too illusory. Not only was the Fu clan stunned, but there was also the Lunar sect, the Han clan, the Qianzhao clan, and the others. They were all staring at Ling Han with wide eyes and slack jaws. However, in the past, a commander of the Rock Palace had appeared, and he had already beaten them to the point where they could not even muster the slightest bit of anger. Now that Ling Han had become the holy son of a 4-star force, they even more so did not dare to mention the matter of revenge. However, there was a single thought in their minds, and that was Ling Han was far too capable of causing trouble. Previously, his talent in martial art was nature-defying, and he had actually been able to kill the successors of 2 celestial king tier sects. And now, he was actually doing so well in an alchemy holy land. How could there possibly be such a freakish freak in this world? Ling Han only smiled at Fu Gaoyan, and then strode over to the center of the plaza. The Empress and the heavenly phoenix divine maiden naturally followed closely behind him, and bewitching maiden Ro also shamelessly followed along. Being able to make a name for herself in this kind of situation was extremely beneficial to her. In future, if anyone wanted to make a move against her or the Purity sect, they would have to consider the reaction of Alchemy City, and whether they could afford to provoke this colossus. Alchemy City was already the strongest force below Celestial King tier, so as long as Celestial King tier forces did not make a move, the Purity sect would be as stable as a mountain. Bewitching Maiden Ro was not only good at seducing others, being able to be chosen as the holy daughter, she was naturally skilled in dealing with people. The Empress saw this, and a faint smile curled up the corners of her lips. This little bewitching maiden would become her husband's woman sooner or later, and it was impossible that the fertile water would flow into the fields of an outsider. Now let her show off. In Alchemy City, it was a rare occasion that 3 4-star alchemists had appeared at the same time. They were all seated on a high platform. They were all ascending origin elites, and all of them were exuding an astonishing aura. They could not be underestimated just because they were alchemists. It's about time we can begin the ceremony. Alchemist Zicheng stood up and presided over the ceremony. Firstly, he was the chairperson of Alchemy City, and secondly, Ling Han was more so his disciple. If he did not support him, who would? Wait! Right at this moment, a shout rang out, and a young man flew over, his expression filled with fighting spirit. I want to battle him again. He pointed at Ling Han. It was none other than Zhao Qingfeng. Chapter 1898. How could a troublemaker appear on such a solemn occasion? Grandmaster Zicheng's expression immediately darkened. Zhao Qingfeng jumping out to ruin the atmosphere was not the main point, but rather the meaning behind this. For today, he had made a lot of arrangements. Safety was of course the most important. It could be said that there shouldn't be any troublemakers. For example, Zhao Qingfeng had been recuperating for a long time. Although he had recovered a few months ago and hadn't left, he had also anticipated that he might cause trouble today. There were experts keeping watch and wouldn't let him out. However, Zhao Qingfeng had appeared. Who did? It should be known that Grandmaster Zicheng was the chairperson of Alchemy City, and the other two 4-star alchemists did not even manage the affairs of Alchemy City. His authority could be said to be unrivaled, and only something as important as appointing a new holy son would require the agreement of the two 4-star alchemists. Well, he'd like to know who it is. How dare you? A new holy son is about to be crowned. How dare you cause trouble here? Hurry up and scram. A dividing soul realm expert berated. Though Zhao Qingfeng's talent was heaven-defying, he was currently only at the peak stage of the 4th severance, so he did not need to take him seriously at all. Zhao Qingfeng didn't even glance at this expert. He just stared at Ling Han, his battle intent almost tangible. Ling Han, do you dare to fight? Judging from the battle intent he emitted, his strength had increased by a large margin compared to before he was injured. As expected of a heaven-defying genius, that defeat not only didn't affect his martial art heart, but it also helped him improve. I really can't imagine it. He's clearly already at the peak stage of the 4th severance, yet his strength can actually still increase. This must be a genius. This is going to be interesting. Back then, Ling Han had only barely managed to win against Zhao Qingfeng. Now, however, Zhao Qingfeng's strength has skyrocketed. It's hard to say who will win this battle. Hee. Although they are competing in martial art and not alchemy, it will still be a huge stain on the new saint's record if he suffers a crushing defeat on the first day. What I'm curious about is how Zhao Qingfeng got here. I don't believe he could get here so easily. You're saying that someone in the city is helping Zhao Qingfeng? Everyone discussed, and after thinking about it carefully, everyone revealed a solemn expression. What did these signs signify? Ling Han looked at Zhao Qingfeng and said indifferently, "You're just a defeated opponent. How can you speak of bravery?" That was the last time, but it's different this time. Zhao Qingfeng's gaze was cold, and his killing intent materialized. His grasp of the massacre law had improved. This was not strange. In such an intense and sublime battle, Ling Han had directly obtained the opportunity to break through to the 4th severance. Though Zhao Qingfeng had been defeated, and had not been able to grasp the comprehension of the 5th severance, his boiling killing intent had still pushed the regulations of slaughter to a higher level. He was extremely confident that even Ling Han's terrifying physique would be able to easily break through such a law-sharpening edge. The Empress took a step forward and walked out. She looked at Zhao Qingfeng coldly, and a light breeze ruffled the hem of her dress, revealing her perfect curves. She was indescribably moving. Even though Zhao Qingfeng was standing on the opposite side of Ling Han, he still couldn't help but be moved by such elegance. Beautiful, truly beautiful. Though he could not see her true appearance, with such a perfect figure, added with that indescribably noble air about her, it made one want to prostrate themselves at her feet, willing to be her subject. Zhao Qingfeng hurriedly focused, and his eyes once again exuded a killing intent that could freeze others. In his life, there was only martial art, and only the path of becoming stronger. Any factor that would affect his strength would have to be abandoned. You're courting death. The Empress humphed coldly and attacked brazenly. When everyone saw this, their expressions involuntarily became strange. Ling Han was extremely daring. In the past, he had dared to beat Zhao Qingfeng and trample on alchemy apprentice Mo. So it turned out that the people by his side were also the same. Who cared if you were Zhao Qingfeng or Zhao Heifeng? They would directly fight. However, though the empress was a fourth severance, how could she compare to Zhao Qingfeng? This was an emperor tier, and was even close to becoming a monarch tier. Aside from a limited few people, who else could suppress him at the same cultivation level? Fuck. This thought had yet to form, and he saw the empress suppress Zhao Qingfeng in an incredibly powerful manner. With a flick of her delicate hand, Zhao Qingfeng only had the strength to fight back. Too strong. How could she be so strong? Everyone was completely speechless. This kind of prodigy that might only appear once in an epoch actually appeared one after another now. Was there still justice in this world? Fu Gaoyan and the others were even more stunned. They only knew that Ling Han was strong, but they did not know that the empress was no less freakish. Now that they had witnessed the empress's glory, they were all stunned. Grandmaster Zicheng stroked his beard and showed a smile. No wonder his little disciple had asked him for 2 natural peach seals. This little girl was indeed freakish, and had the potential to become a 5th severance. She was worth nurturing. In the first 200 moves, Zhao Qingfeng could still block, but after that, he fell into an absolute disadvantage. After 400 moves he could only take a beating. He was clearly no match for her, and anyone could come out. His defeat was already set in stone. After 2,000 moves, he threw up blood repeatedly, and his life hung by a thread. Trash! Lu Xianming humphed coldly. He stood to the side with the other holy sons and holy daughters, and when his eyes swept over Zhao Qingfeng, there was an expression of intense disdain. He had hoped that Zhao Qingfeng could cause some trouble for Ling Han, but he had never imagined that he could not even defeat a woman by Ling Han's side. Instead, he had become a foil, making Ling Han appear even more powerful. Any woman by his side, are all supreme prodigies. Enough! An immortal palace tier elite jumped out, and casually pressed a hand down, separating the empress and Zhao Qingfeng. The empress was extremely displeased, and she glared at that immortal palace tier elite, looking like she was going to beat him up. That immortal palace tier elite couldn't help but smile bitterly. Facing the empress's exquisite beauty, it was actually very difficult for him to get angry. Of course, another reason was because of her relationship with Ling Han. She was the woman of a new holy son, so he naturally had to give her some face. Ling Han, are women the only thing you know how to do? Zhao Qingfeng was still shouting, his expression filled with indignation. This time, his strength had skyrocketed, and he was full of ambition, believing that he would definitely be able to defeat Ling Han. Never would he have imagined that he would already be defeated before the main character had even made a move. He was really about to explode in anger. The empress was furious, and she glowered menacingly at Zhao Qingfeng, a supreme might exuding from her. Ling Han took a step forward, pressed a hand on the empress's shoulder, and said with a smile, "Let me." The empress nodded and took a step back. Ling Han retrieved a pill vial from Zhao Qingfeng and tossed it over, saying, "Don't say that I'm bullying you. Here, this is the Frost Jade Dew pill. It can temporarily suppress one's advantage and allow one to recover to their peak condition. However, it can only last for an hour." This was an extremely practical alchemical pill, and could even save one's life at certain times. Zhao Qingfeng was astonished. He had not imagined that Ling Han would still accept the challenge under such circumstances, and had even given him a top-notch alchemical pill. He accepted the pill vial without hesitation, poured out the pill, and swallowed it, not even glancing at it. If Ling Han still dared to play tricks in this kind of situation, then would he still have the face to show his face in the future? "Aya!" Ling Han suddenly exclaimed, and searched his body, saying, Sorry, I took the wrong medicine. That is a strong laxative." Fuck. Zhao Qingfeng's face instantly twitched, and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Chapter 1900. Zhao Qingfeng stared blankly at Ling Han, an indescribably strange expression on his face. In his impression, Ling Han's battle prowess was actually about the same as his. It was just that the latter's defenses were stronger. And that was why he was defeated. Otherwise, in his first battle with Ling Han, he would have had countless chances to defeat Ling Han. But this time, there was an astonishing change in the battle prowess between the two of them. His most powerful strike was blocked by a single finger of Ling Han's. Ling Han had done it so easily, as if he was just a cat or dog. This made him think of Yin Xianlu. Before the latter had advanced into the fifth severance, he was as weak as could be in front of Yin Xianlu. What supreme prodigy! He was completely just a worm. Could this brat be a second Yin Xianlu? Thoughts raced through his mind, but the flesh on his face was falling off piece by piece. There was no blood, as if he had really turned into bronze. It was just that this bronze had decayed now, and that was why the pieces were falling off. That previous attack was his most glorious attack. If he succeeded, he would rise to a higher level. And if he failed, he would be doomed eternally. Qingfeng turned into dust, and the pieces flew off. Everyone was silent. No one could deny Zhao Qingfeng's strength. This was a prodigy that made even the holy sons of celestial King Tirsex pale in comparison. But now, he had died so worthlessly. Yes, he hadn't even managed to make Ling Han suffer a single injury. Zhao Qingfeng opened his mouth and said the last words of his life. You are indeed very strong, but I admit defeat. You definitely can't be a match for the Lord Holy Sun. If I die, you won't live for long, either, because with your personality, it is impossible that you would submit to the Lord Holy Sun. And this is something that the Lord Holy Sun would definitely not allow. As he spoke, his movements were slightly larger, and immediately caused the speed of the wind to accelerate. When he finished speaking, his whole person had also turned into pieces, drifting in the wind. The life aura and brand that belonged to him had completely disappeared. From now on, there was no more Zhao Qingfeng in this world. Ling Han, however, broke into a smile. Whether it was Zhao Qingfeng's warning or threat before his death, it didn't affect his Dao heart in the slightest. In a battle of the same cultivation level, he feared no one. So what if it was Yin Xianlu? He could only become a stepping stone on his path to greatness, allowing him to complete another self-transcendence. Grandmaster Zicheng also smiled. Though Zhao Qingfeng's death here was a major event, the Eternal Prosperity sect still had to be reasonable, right? Even if Yin Xianlu was unreasonable, he was only a holy son, a severing mundane tier holy son. Time. His little disciple needed time. As long as he had enough time, he would be able to look down on the world. Let's continue. Alchemist Zicheng said. Although there had been an unexpected turn of events, it had instead helped Ling Han. Of course, he would definitely investigate who had released Zhao Qingfeng. Wait, at this moment, someone interrupted. Fuck, what's wrong with everyone today? An old man walked out from the crowd with his hands behind his back, emitting a powerful aura. Lu Jin. Grandmaster Zicheng frowned. Lu Jin was a 3-star alchemist, but he also had another identity, and that was an ascending origin tier elite. Thus, Lu Jin had always thought very highly of himself, and was not very obedient. Moreover, he was indeed a prodigy of alchemy, and had the possibility of becoming a 4-star alchemist. But he suddenly jumped out at this time, causing alchemist Zicheng to show an expression of displeasure. He did not mind using his authority as a chairperson to expel him. Chairperson Lu Jin clasped his hands at alchemist Zicheng, his expression proud. He did not take Grandmaster Zicheng seriously. When everyone saw this, they all gasped. Previously, Zhao Qingfeng's appearance was already very strange, and now another Lu Jin had appeared. Could it be that some unforeseen event was about to occur in Alchemy City? What is it? Alchemist Zicheng showed an expression of displeasure. Of all times, he had to jump out at this time. However, he was also a 3-star alchemist, and more so an ascending origin tier elite, so he had to give him some face. I have an important matter, Lu Jin said loudly, his voice like thunder, rolling out. Under the might of an ascending origin tier elite, Ling Han's radiance instantly dissipated completely. What important matter do you have that you have to say it at this time? Alchemist Zicheng asked menacingly. If you cannot give me a sufficient reason, no matter who you are, I will still beat you. Lu Jin's lips curved up in a smile, and he said, because in front of this matter, a mere ceremony to elect a new holy son can be cast aside. What arrogance! Now we have invited guests from all over the world. Not only have countless 3-star forces come, but there are also many 4-star forces, all for the sake of a new holy son. But now you say that it can be cast aside. This boast is going to reach the heavens. Oh! Alchemist Zicheng could not be bothered to waste words anymore. He looked at Lu Jin. If he could not give a reasonable explanation, he would not give him any face. Because Lu Jin pointed at himself, his voice suddenly becoming countless times louder, have already broken through to become a 4-star alchemist. 4-star alchemist, 4-star alchemist, 4-star alchemist. All of a sudden, there were only these 4 words echoing in the whole plaza. Everyone was stunned, and only after at least a dozen or so heartbeats passed did someone take a deep breath. Then a commotion broke out in the plaza. 4-star alchemist. There were only 3 4-star alchemists in Alchemy City, and in fact, in the entire Eastern Celestial Realm. Ascending to this position was equivalent to becoming a Celestial King. What kind of concept was a Celestial King? This was indeed a major matter. In comparison, an additional Holy Son was really a small matter that did not even need to be mentioned. It was too insignificant. Previously, Grandmaster Zicheng could still use his status in alchemy to suppress Lu Jin, but now their status was equal. 4-star alchemists were too transcendent. If there was internal conflict among 4-star alchemists, it was extremely possible that it would lead to the collapse of Alchemy City. This was because there were too few 4-star alchemists, and any one of them could become a supreme force. Alchemist Zicheng paused slightly. He was thinking about many things. Lu Jin had broken through to become a 4-star alchemist, and Zhao Qingfeng had broken through the obstacles to arrive here. Now it seemed like they had all come together. Not simple. The elder's expression did not change. He had lived for trillions of years, so he definitely had this much subtlety. He calmly asked, "Do you have proof?" "This is a 4-star celestial pill that I just refined 11 days ago. You guys can appraise it." Lu Jin flicked his finger. Xiao! A white light shot in the direction of Alchemist Chu Yi. It was actually not given to Alchemist Zicheng, but to Alchemist Chu Yi. There was something mysterious about this. Alchemist Chu Yi was currently raising a wine gourd and drinking to his heart's content. When the pill bottle flew over, he stretched out a hand and lightly grabbed it. A white pill bottle appeared in his hand. There was a hint of reluctance on his face, and he reluctantly placed the wine gourd down. He then undid the seal on the pill bottle. This kind of celestial pill was really too valuable. Even a tiny bit of its aura leaking out would be a massive loss. It had to be sealed and stored. Alchemist Zicheng and Alchemist Heavenly Heart both scooted over to take a look. The surrounding people also did the same. They all stood on their tiptoes. Before the pill had even appeared, a wisp of green aura rose up from the bottle. It did not dissipate into the air, but rather transformed into the appearance of a little fox. Its eyes were extremely large, and it was extremely adorable. Chapter 1901. Grandmaster Zicheng and the others all wore solemn expressions. The higher the level of an alchemical pill, the more bizarre it would be, and for a 4-star alchemical pill, it was very normal for its medicinal power to take the form of a beast. No, this is not the medicinal power taking the form of a beast, but rather a celestial pill, Alchemist Heavenly Heart immediately said. He was a life form formed from a celestial pill, so he was most sensitive to this. Alchemist Zicheng and Chu Yi were both given a fright. Concocting a celestial pill with a life form, this was not the ability of a 4-star alchemist, but a 5-star alchemist. No, an ordinary 5-star alchemist was not enough. It had to be a 5-star alchemist that had immersed himself in this field for countless years and reached the pinnacle. How could this be a 4-star alchemist? Alchemist Heavenly Heart exclaimed in surprise, and couldn't help but look disappointed. It's true that the medicinal power has taken the form of a beast, but this is not a true life form. Rather, some kind of seal has been deliberately added into the alchemical pill, causing it to seem like a life form. He had initially thought that he had found a fellow alchemical pill, but he had not expected that he would only be disappointed. Grandmaster Zicheng moved, channeling some kind of celestial technique, and this little azure fox immediately returned to a ball of qi, a gaseous celestial pill. The three alchemists exchanged a look and said in unison, "Azure Cloud Pill." Among 4-star celestial pills, the Azure Cloud Pill was the easiest to concoct. Thus, any alchemist that attempted to break through to the 4-star level would basically choose to concoct the Azure Cloud Pill. However, no matter how easy it was still a 4-star celestial pill. It has not been more than a month since it was concocted. The three great alchemists naturally could easily make this judgment. If they did not even have this little bit of insight, they would not be worthy of being called 4-star alchemists. Clearly, this was not a 4-star alchemical pill that Lu Jin had found somewhere, and then lied about having concocted it himself to gain the title of a 4-star alchemist. Alchemist Zicheng sealed the pill bottle again, and then tossed it back to Lu Jin, saying, "Not bad. This is indeed a 4-star alchemical pill. Congratulations on breaking through to become a 4-star alchemist, Brother Lu. This is also a great joy for our Alchemy City. We have another 4-star alchemist." He laughed loudly. "Today is a day of double happiness. We have another 4-star alchemist, as well as a talented holy son." The old man's reaction was extraordinarily fast, and he purposely put Lu Jin's breakthrough and Ling Han's ascension together. This was because he knew very well that Lu Jin had jumped out at this moment, which was definitely to target Ling Han. Of course, to say that a 4-star alchemist was deliberately making things difficult for a measly 1-star alchemist, a measly severing mundane tier cultivator, was a little too much. The final arrow should have been aimed at him. At this level of the game, it looked calm on the surface, but in reality, it was filled with the flashes of blades and shadows of swords. Who knew how many people would be involved? Yet Lu Jin waved his hand and said, "Brother Zicheng, you've been in the position of chairperson for almost 300 billion years, right?" All of a sudden, Alchemist Zicheng's heart thumped. His gaze instantly became sharp, and he said, "Not bad. Your memory is very good. According to the rules of the sect, the chairperson changes every 300 billion years." Lu Jin stared at Grandmaster Zicheng and said, "I suggest that we immediately choose a holy son as the successor." Forced to abdicate, realization dawned on Alchemist Zicheng. No wonder Ling Han had rushed over in such a hurry. As it turned out, he was aiming for the position of chairperson. In Alchemy City, there was indeed such a rule. The chairperson could only hold the position for 300 billion years, and when the time was up, he would have to abdicate. Originally, there were still 200 million to 300 million years before Alchemist Zicheng retired. There was enough time for him to raise Ling Han's alchemy prowess. And who, under ordinary circumstances, would have dared suggest to him that it was time to appoint his successor? Grandmaster Tian Xan and Grandmaster Chu Yi did not care at all. Alchemist Zicheng could naturally take his time to choose. But now that Lu Jin had broken through to become a 4-star alchemist, he had the right to force him to abdicate. Why did he have to do this? One had to know that even if he had become a 4-star alchemist, his status was still far inferior to Alchemist Zicheng's. Why did he have to offend Alchemist Zicheng? Because Lu Jin had another identity, and that was Lu Xianming's master. Thus, all of this was actually targeted at Ling Han. However, attacking him was not the final goal, but rather for the position of chairperson of Alchemy City. If a holy son was chosen as the successor now, there naturally would not be a place for Ling Han. He had not gone through this ceremony, so he naturally could not be considered a holy son. Then, how could he have the right? Taking a step back, even if Ling Han had the right, how could he compete with the other holy sons now? He had only just advanced into the ranks of 1-star alchemists. This move was very vicious, and of course very coincidental. If Lu Jin had not coincidentally become a 4-star alchemist, then it would not have any power at all. If one wanted to become a holy son, they had to obtain the approval of all 4-star alchemists. Thus, if Lu Jin objected later, Ling Han would not be able to become a holy son. Then, the holy son that had the highest chance of standing out would be Lu Xianming. For his disciple, and more so for the position of chairperson of Alchemy City, Lu Jin was willing to go all out. I know when to choose a successor. Grandmaster Zicheng showed an expression of displeasure. Lu Jin had only just become a 4-star alchemist, but he had nurtured 3 4-star alchemists. So how could he take Lu Jin seriously? They were both 4-star alchemists, but their level of spirit refinement was different, so there was still a very, very big gap between them. Then I also firmly object to Ling Han becoming the new Holy Sun. Lu Jin shook his head and said, "This boy is too good at causing trouble. He killed 2 successors of Celestial King Tiersex. And just now, he forced Zhao Qingfeng to his death, offending the Eternal Prosperity sect. If we still promote him to become a Holy Sun, wouldn't that be a slap to the face of those celestial kings?" These words were not completely to make things difficult. It was just that the matter of Zai Bingyan and Luo Changfeng had basically been settled by Grandmaster Zicheng, and Zhao Qingfeng had also been released by him. Now he was blaming it on Ling Han. He was really shameless enough. Alchemist Zicheng's expression was dark, and he showed strong displeasure. In fact, he had not chosen Ling Han as the Holy Sun out of any selfish motives. Otherwise, which of his 3 previous disciples would not have the right to inherit the position of chairperson? But Lu Jin? For the sake of his disciple, he was really unscrupulous and shameless. However, Lu Jin indeed had a great advantage. As long as he did not agree, Ling Han could not possibly become a Holy Sun, and he had the absolute initiative. Then, after 300 million years, Alchemist Zicheng would eventually have to abdicate, so the possibility of Lu Xianming succeeding the position was extremely high. Alchemist Zicheng looked at Lu Jin, and Lu Jin also looked at Alchemist Zicheng. Their eyes met, and they silently communicated about something. After a while, Grandmaster Zicheng spoke and said, 3 years later, we will choose a successor from among the Holy Sons and Holy Daughters. Lu Jin also said, I also agree that Ling Han will become the new Holy Sun. The 2 mighty figures each took a step back and reached an agreement. On the surface, Lu Jin had a great advantage. It was a mere 3 years, and even if Ling Han stayed in the time cultivation chamber every day, that was only 300 years. So how far could he grow? Could he compete with Lu Xianming? And this was also the longest time that Alchemist Zicheng could fight for. After all, the longer the time was delayed, the more variables could occur. Alchemist Zicheng was willing to agree to a time limit of 3 years, because he had taken into account Ling Han's comprehension ability in alchemy. Only he knew that Ling Han could already perform spirit refinement. 3 years later, it was extremely likely that Ling Han would become a 2-star alchemist, and he would also reach 2nd refinement in spirit refinement. Then, he would be qualified to compete with the other Holy Sons and Holy Daughters. Chapter 1902. After the 2 big shots reached an agreement, the ceremony continued. Ling Han glanced at Lu Jin, and then at Lu Xianming, who had a smug smile on his face. He couldn't help but reveal a meaningful smile. Does Lu Xianming think he's going to win? For others, a mere 3 years couldn't change anything. After entering the time cultivation room, it would only be 300 years. Wanting to make a huge breakthrough in alchemy in 300 years, wasn't this a joke? However, Ling Han had the reincarnation tree, which was a supreme Dharma treasure that could reverse the situation. You're just a petty person who's intoxicated by success. Sooner or later, you'll be dealt with. Ling Han did not take it to heart. There was nothing about Lu Xianming that was worthy of his attention. Of course, becoming a Holy Sun was not something that could be done just because one wanted to. Ling Han had to display his abilities in alchemy. Not only did he have to answer some old alchemist's strange questions, which were naturally related to alchemy and medicinal theory, he even had to concoct a pill in front of everyone. After fully proving his talent in alchemy, he passed the test and was finally crowned. This step of coronation was exceptionally solemn and dignified. Ling Han's name would be engraved on the absolute beginning stone of Alchemy City, and when a new chairperson was born among these Holy Sons and Holy Daughters, everyone's name would be erased. Only one person could be listed on the list of past sect lords, while the others would be replaced by the next generation of holy sons and holy daughters. After alchemist Zicheng announced that Ling Han was the 10th holy son of this generation of Alchemy City, an immortal palace tier elite immediately moved and began to write Ling Han's name on the absolute beginning stone. This was derived from the primal chaos source rock and was extremely hard. Normally, it was used to record the glorious achievements of the ancestors. In the ancient realm, the absolute beginning stone could absorb all attacks, and only Genesis tier elites could surpass its limits and cause damage. After coming to the immortal territory, there were many people who could destroy the primordial stone, but it was still used as a record. However, even for an immortal palace tier elite, it would still take a great deal of effort to write down a person's name. Otherwise, there would be no need for an immortal palace tier elite to do it personally. This was not just a matter of dignity. Hong long long. Only to hear a loud sound, a burning cloud appeared on the horizon, surging with boundless fiery light, quickly rushing over from the distance. Only was this really a burning cloud? Why would it release an earth-shaking and mountain-shaking noise? At first, that immortal palace tier elite had been concentrating on carving Ling Han's name. However, after being startled, his hand instantly slipped, and the Ling character on Ling Han's name became crooked. Although he could still recognize that it was a Ling character, it was incredibly ugly. This expert couldn't help but reveal a look of anger. Didn't they see that he was carving some words? Who dared to scare him and even succeeded? Humph! Alchemist Zicheng couldn't help but humph loudly. He raised his head to look at the sky, and loudly said, "Which clan are you from? How can you be so unruly? Could this Huo Yun be an expert?" Everyone raised their heads. The speed of the fiery cloud was especially fast. In just a short while it had already surged over. Even though they were separated by a long distance, and even though they were protected by the array, it still made everyone feel a terrible heat wave. They could only feel a burning pain. Hong, the flames faded, and a massive battleship appeared. It rapidly slowed down from its rapid speed, and finally hovered in the sky. On this battleship, there was shockingly a lightning-shaped symbol. Thundercloud Palace. Alchemist Zicheng couldn't help but humph softly, his voice filled with strong displeasure. His expression became serious. He had already personally made a trip to the Thundercloud Palace and the Zai clan to resolve these two grudges for Ling Han. Though the two great Celestial King tier forces were very displeased, their heir had been killed in a fair battle. Logically speaking, they wouldn't send any powerful figures to seek revenge on Ling Han. Since Alchemist Zicheng had personally come to apologize, he had also given sufficient compensation. Most importantly, the Rock Palace was really not to be trifled with. Thus, the two great Celestial King tier forces reluctantly agreed not to pursue and kill Ling Han. In reality, if it weren't for Alchemist Zicheng's visit, they wouldn't have known that the two Ling Han were actually the same person. But now the Thundercloud Palace actually came. It was very coincidental. Lu Jin had just become a 4-star alchemist, and almost ruined the matter of Ling Han becoming a holy son. And then, the Thundercloud Palace came over. There had to be something strange about this. Could it be that the two of them had colluded together? Alchemist Zicheng couldn't help but glance at Lu Jin, yet Lu Jin's expression was calm, and there wasn't the slightest bit of emotion on his face. Having reached this kind of cultivation level, and standing in such a high position, he naturally wouldn't show his emotions. "Ha ha ha ha, you didn't miss the good day, did you?" With a long laugh, a burly man walked down from the skies. Every step he took was a few miles, and with 3 or 4 steps, he landed on the plaza. This naturally triggered the attacks of the formations in the city, but when they landed on that man's body, there was only a splash of dazzling light, and there was no way to wound him in the slightest. Ba Yao. Alchemist Zicheng's expression tightened, and an intense expression of wariness appeared on his face. Just like how there was still the difference between first refinement, second refinement, fifth refinement, and seventh refinement among 4-star alchemists, martial art was naturally the same. This Ba Yao was one of the few ascending origin tier elites of the Thundercloud Palace. When he was young, he had the status of a holy son, and after advancing into the ascending origin tier, He had become an elder of the Thundercloud Palace. At that time, he had been incredibly domineering, defeating a great many holy sons and holy daughters of Celestial King tier-level forces, and was thought to have a sliver of hope of becoming a Celestial King. Unfortunately, after several tens of billions of years had passed, he was still stuck at the Ascending Origin tier. However, he, an Ascending Origin tier, was definitely a top-notch existence among his peers in terms of battle prowess. Just like the 7th refinement and 8th refinement of 4-star alchemists, he was practically known as the strongest below Celestial King tier. Of course, whether he was the strongest or not was only a compliment given to him by some people. In truth, who knew exactly how strong the strongest Ascending Origin tier was? Grandmaster Zicheng, Grandmaster Chu Yi, Grandmaster Wen Tian, and Grandmaster Lu Jin. Ba Yao called out as his eyes swept over each of the 4 great alchemists. In the end, his eyes stopped on Lu Jin and showed a smile. Alchemist Zicheng and Ling Han were both startled. This Ba Yao had just arrived, so how did he know that Lu Jin had already advanced to 4-star? Obviously, they had long since contacted each other. He had come with ill intentions. This is the outrageously audacious Ling Han. Ba Yao did not care about the reactions of the 4 great alchemists, and instead looked towards Ling Han, appearing to be incredibly presumptuous. He too had this kind of qualification. In terms of battle prowess, he was already one of the best in the Ascending Origin tier. Furthermore, Alchemy City could not concoct a celestial that could help him advance another level. Then, having no desires, he would be firm. He did not need to lower his voice to alchemists. This junior is Ling Han. As for whether I am outrageously audacious or not, that will depend on who I am facing, Ling Han said, neither servile nor overbearing. Gasp! Everyone was rendered speechless. This guy was still saying that he was outrageously audacious, asking for Ling Han's help. But he had already talked back in front of an Ascending Origin tier elite. Was that not outrageously audacious? Hee. Ba Yao instead laughed, and then laughed wildly. All of a sudden, his laughter suddenly stopped, and he stared menacingly at Ling Han. Audacious maniac, you actually dare kill the holy son of my sect. Though Grandmaster Zicheng has spoken on your behalf, the death penalty can be spared, but punishment cannot be forgiven. You kneel. Chapter 1904. Don't even think about it. Lu Jin suddenly jumped up, pointing at Grandmaster Zicheng, looking flustered and exasperated. If he really was expelled from Alchemy City, that would be a humiliation that could never be washed away, and he would be laughed at wherever he went. Alchemist Zicheng completely ignored him, and only turned to Grandmaster Chu Yi and Grandmaster Wen Tian. What do the two of you say? His expression was frosty, and his aura was domineering, with an indescribable dominance. Who said he only knew alchemy? Everyone was stunned by Grandmaster Zicheng's aura, and felt their hearts surge, their scalps numb. Grandmaster Zicheng was really bold, abandoning a 4-star alchemist just like that. It should be known that on the surface, there were only 4 4-star alchemists in the entire Eastern Celestial Realm, and each of them was an influential and supreme being that could influence a region. Brother Zicheng, you are the chairperson of Alchemy City, so what you say naturally goes. Grandmaster Chu Yi took a sip of wine, appearing indifferent. However, he added, Alchemy City has always only had 3 4-star alchemists, and that's fine. This implied that he agreed. 3 4-star alchemists are enough, and we don't need this kind of traitor. Meanwhile, Grandmaster Wen Tian was expressionless. He was different, and his way of thinking was different. He said, fine. Aside from new alchemical pills and life forms, there were not many things that could attract his interest. So what if there was one more 4-star alchemist or one less? He did not care at all. Hearing the conversation between these 3, everyone felt their mouths twitch, and they did not dare to believe it. A 4-star alchemist was actually expelled in just a few words? This was practically child's play. Scram! Grandmaster Zicheng pointed at Lu Jin. This time he was truly angered. He actually dared to have designs on his disciple, causing the old man to completely explode. You can't expel me. I am a 4-star alchemist. Lu Jin's face was pale, and he shouted loudly, "You are abusing your position to avenge a personal grudge. I don't accept this, I don't accept this." "So what?" Grandmaster Zicheng scoffed. "So what if I am abusing my position to avenge a personal grudge?" His two consecutive rhetorical questions caused Lu Jin to fall silent, his face shockingly pale. Grandmaster Zicheng's status in the alchemy world was really too high. In the past he, a mere alchemy apprentice, could do as he pleased in Alchemy City, not even taking a 3-star alchemist seriously. Then Grandmaster Zicheng was naturally even more awesome. He had nurtured 3 4-star alchemists, so what kind of achievement was this? In the world of alchemy, Grandmaster Zicheng was like a colossal tree that reached into the heavens. If it weren't for the fact that he lacked some fated opportunities, he might even have had the chance to become a 5-star alchemist. "Ho ho! I have no choice but to speak a word of fairness," Ba Yao interrupted. The Thundercloud Hall and Lu Jin had a secret deal, and the Thundercloud Hall would do their best to help Lu Jin's line ascend to the position of chairperson of Alchemy City. And in return, Alchemy City would give the Thundercloud Hall a large amount of alchemical pills for free or at an extremely discounted price every year. As for dealing with Ling Han, it was just a matter of convenience. Who would have thought that this kind of suppression would actually provoke such a strong backlash from Grandmaster Zicheng? A dignified 4-star alchemist, how can he be expelled just like that? Ba Yao asked solemnly, "Who do you think you are? Is there any place for you to speak here?" Alchemist Zicheng immediately pointed a finger at Ba Yao, his disdain indescribable. Who was he? He was a king among 4-star alchemists. From a certain perspective he was a celestial king. No matter how invincible you, Ba Yao, were in the ascending origin tier, could you be used as a celestial king? If you weren't, then shut up. What right did you have to interrupt in front of him? Get lost! Alchemist Zicheng shouted. Ling Han's heart surged. So beneath his greed for money, this master of his still hid such a domineering side. However, ordinarily, he did not need to reveal his domineering side at all to suppress everything. Now that he was enraged, it finally exploded out. He was also very moved. Grandmaster Zicheng had risen in anger because of him. Otherwise, Ba Yao was a member of a celestial king tier level sect, and he himself was also an ascending origin tier elite. How could he be so easily humiliated? Ba Yao's expression turned cold, and he said, "Grandmaster Zicheng, be a little more polite with your words. I give you 3 breaths to get lost. Otherwise, I will spare no expense to summon all the elites in this world to hunt you down until you die." Grandmaster Zicheng said menacingly, "If you don't believe me, you can try." When these words were spoken, Ba Yao's aura was instantly completely suppressed. Invincible in the ascending origin tier? That was just empty words. Among ascending origin tier forces, he, a king tier of ascending origin tier, could indeed be invincible, but it was not like the Thundercloud Palace was the only celestial king tier force in this world. Could it be that the other celestial king tier level sects did not have holy sons and holy daughters of the previous generation, who have cultivated to the ascending origin tier, but were unable to break through, yet tempered the ascending origin tier to become incredibly powerful? If a 4-star alchemist spared no expense, he would definitely be able to take out something that would tempt those elites. Then he would really be in danger. The Thundercloud Palace was only a 1st heaven celestial king tier force, while the Eastern Celestial Realm had 2nd heaven, 3rd heaven, 7th heaven, and 8th heaven celestial king tier forces. So what if they killed him? Could it be that they were afraid that the Thundercloud Celestial King would seek revenge? Just like that person from the Rock Palace. So what if he came from the Zai clan or the Thundercloud Hall? He killed him without saying anything. As long as one's background was strong enough, one would be able to act with confidence and not be lenient when the time came. 1. Grandmaster Zicheng began to count, a sinister look in his eyes. 2. Ba Yao's expression changed drastically. In the end, he did not dare to gamble on Grandmaster Zicheng's determination. With a humph, he leapt up, and was already flying towards the battleship in the skies. Grandmaster Zicheng did not even give him a look, and turned to Lu Jin. "You can also get lost. No, you can't do this. I'm a 4-star alchemist, I'm a 4-star alchemist. Lu Jin called out loudly, slightly hysterical. Grandmaster Zicheng waved his sleeve and said, Brother Gu, Brother Chong, Brother Zhao, chase this person out. Immediately, 3 ascending origin tier elites walked out. Aside from alchemists, there were similarly cultivators in Alchemy City. They were the true core strength that guarded Alchemy City. Alchemists, the majority of their time would definitely be spent on alchemy. Brother Lu, please. These 3 people said to Lu Jin expressionless. When Lu Jin saw this, he knew that there was already no room for redemption. His hands involuntarily clenched into fists, his heart filled with regret. Why didn't he just stop while he was ahead? Previously, he had the upper hand, yet greedily went to chase after Grandmaster Zicheng. And the result was that he had suffered a head-on blow. Not only had he lost all his advantage, he had even suffered a crushing defeat. Only now did he know how far apart he was from Grandmaster Zicheng. It was not something that could really be considered equal, just because they were both 4-star alchemists. How regretful. He sighed and turned to leave. His figure was stooped and filled with desolation. He was completely different from his previous high-spirited self. Everyone sighed in shock. Everyone exclaimed in surprise. Everything had changed too quickly. At the beginning, merely Lu Jin alone had forced Grandmaster Zicheng to retreat step by step, forcing him to make all kinds of compromises. In the end, when Ba Yao, this powerful reinforcement, arrived, it instead sounded the horn of Grandmaster Zicheng's counterattack. This was probably how the affairs of the world were unpredictable. Grandmaster Zicheng swept an eye over the holy sons and holy daughters, and saw that Lu Xianming was currently shivering. He calmly said, 3 years later, the matter of selecting a successor will proceed as per normal. Chapter 1905. What? Everyone was confused. Why? Previously, it was clear that Grandmaster Zicheng had been forced to make a concession and agreed to hold the selection of a successor 3 years later. But now, Lu Jin had clearly been dealt with, and added with Grandmaster Zicheng's current domineering aura. Even if he said that Ling Han would directly take over, there probably wouldn't be many people who would dare to object. Even if that wasn't the case, it could be changed and the deadline could be pushed back, such as 10,000 years or 100,000 years. For immortals, this wasn't a long time, but it would give Ling Han enough time to grow. Why should we stand by our original decision? This was the difference between Grandmaster Zicheng and Lu Jin. He was a man of his word. Everyone was filled with admiration for Grandmaster Zicheng in their hearts. No wonder he could sit as the chairperson of Alchemy City for so long. And everyone respected him. Merely from this aspect, even Lu Jin could not compare to him. Ling Han looked towards Grandmaster Zicheng, only to see an enigmatic smile on the old man's face. He knew that this was Grandmaster Zicheng adding pressure and motivation to him. However, everyone had thought too highly of Grandmaster Zicheng. Ling Han could easily guess that if he still hadn't reached the same heights as Lu Xianming and the others in 3 years, then Alchemist Zicheng would indeed still start the selection of a successor. However, this selection could take 1 or 2 years, or it could also take 8 or 10 years, or even several million years. Who said he had to decide right away? He had lived for trillions of years. What a cunning old fox. No, wily old fox. Lu Xianming heaved a sigh of relief. He was worried that he would be punished as well. He didn't expect that not only would he be safe, but he would also be chosen as the successor 3 years later. He would definitely defeat everyone in 3 years and return with limitless glory. Now he had to keep a low profile. Even if someone stepped on his face, he wouldn't flare up. He couldn't let anyone get the slightest chance to flare up, lest he lost the right to compete. However, he had thought too much. Regardless of whether it was Alchemist Zicheng or Ling Han, neither of them had taken him seriously. Continue. Grandmaster Zicheng waved his hand and sat back down. He closed his eyes, looking like a tired old man. But who dares underestimate him? He had chased away a king tier of the ascending origin tier, and chased away a 4-star alchemist. Just how domineering was this? The celebration began. The representatives of the various 3-star forces and 4-star forces, All took turns to express their congratulations to Ling Han, and also presented him with heavy gifts. At first, there hadn't been so many gifts, but considering how much Grandmaster Zicheng doted on Ling Han, he had added quite a lot at the last minute. Ling Han did not stand on ceremony. He did not reject anyone. The more the better. This caused Grandmaster Zicheng, who occasionally glanced at him, to feel extremely gratified. His little disciple really had his style, and was as greedy as his life. Good, very good. First, it was the representatives of the 4-star forces, and then the 3-star forces. For example, the representatives of the Lunar Sect and the Beiyu clan all stepped forward to offer their congratulations, and offered generous gifts to Ling Han. But the expressions on their faces were naturally incredibly awkward. They had to congratulate their enemies with a smile on their faces, which made them feel awkward. But what could they do? He was the holy son of a 4-star force, and any ascending origin tier elite would be able to defeat them easily. She only hoped that Ling Han could forget about the past. You guys prepare more godly metal. I'm a very forgetful person, Ling Han said with a smile. The representatives of the Lunar Sect and the others were all dumbfounded. Who would have thought that Ling Han would actually extort them in public? Thankfully, as long as he was willing to ask for benefits, then hatred could be easily resolved. Furthermore, godly metal wasn't anything valuable. Pseudo-divine metal was valuable, and divine metal was lethal. Even celestial kings wouldn't be able to produce it. The status of the Fu clan was relatively too low. They were very, very late in their turn, and only then were they qualified to come over to offer their congratulations. Holy Sun Ling, congratulations. Fu Gaoyan clasped his hands together, feeling incredibly rueful inside. Ling Han was really too miraculous. Meanwhile, Fu Xiaoyan's expression was dim. The instant Ling Han broke off relations with the Fu clan, it was already decided that it was completely impossible between them. Ling Han deliberately said a few more words to Fu Gaoyan, giving Fu Gaoyan enough face. True enough, when Fu Gaoyan retreated, he was surrounded by a great many people, asking all sorts of questions. They were all trying to find out the relationship between him and Ling Han. Being able to become the friend of this Red Holy Sun, he was naturally worth roping in. In this way, Fu Gaoyan should be almost certain to inherit the position of clan leader of the Fu clan in future. Towards friends, Ling Han had always been selfless. If he could help them, he would help them to the end. Your ass. Situ Xiaojin walked over, an expression of intense curiosity on her face. Stop. Ling Han hurriedly stopped her. I'm fine. There's no need for you to worry about me. Che, you're so secretive. You definitely have something to hide, Situ Xiaojin mumbled. Yet she was pulled to the side by Situ Tang with a smile. Xiang Yin also gave Ling Han a few words of encouragement. In the past, he had been very good to Ling Han, but he had definitely never thought that Ling Han would actually become the holy son of Alchemy City one day, which made him feel very rueful. The banquet was held for 3 days, and Ling Han's hands were sore from receiving so many gifts. When it was over, Ling Han immediately used the divine demon sword to swallow all the godly metal. Unfortunately, he still couldn't make the divine demon sword advance to 4-star pseudo-divine metal. He and the Empress both began to cultivate in seclusion. They both had the same goal, and that was to first reach the peak stage of the 4th severance, and then attempt to break through to the 5th severance. And Ling Han had another mission, and that was to become a 2-star alchemist within 3 years, and do his best to reach 2nd refinement in spirit refinement. In this way, he would no longer be the slightest bit weaker than the other holy sons and holy daughters, and at that time, it would be a matter of whose level of spirit refinement was higher. Ling Han entered the Black Tower and comprehended the 2-star pill recipe under the reincarnation tree. This took him 30,000 years, and then he entered the time cultivation chamber to practice alchemy. From time to time, he would ask for guidance from alchemist Zicheng, and because his improvement was rapid, Grandmaster Zicheng would be very gentle and encouraging each time. This little disciple of his really could become a 2-star alchemist 3 years later. Then he wouldn't have to play any tricks, and could really immediately choose a successor. Meanwhile, he could retire in peace, concoct alchemical pills, teach disciples, and so on. Oh right, he had to let his little disciple have a few more children. He wanted to teach more outstanding alchemists. Taking advantage of the time when Ling Han was in seclusion, he began to choose a concubine for Ling Han. She had to have a certain level of alchemy, and only then could she combine the bloodlines of both parents, could she possibly surpass her parents. Ling Han naturally didn't know. Otherwise, it was possible that he would have to escape from Alchemy City. Inside the Black Tower, under the reincarnation tree, time flew. When 2.5 years had passed in the outside world, Ling Han finally succeeded and concocted his first 2-star celestial pill. After informing Grandmaster Zicheng, he did not stop and began to perform spirit refinement again. Second refinement, this was the goal that he had to reach. He did not fall behind in martial art either. Grandmaster Zicheng was incredibly concerned about this little disciple of his, and threw cultivation resources at him, as if they were free. He did not use the resources of Alchemy City, and the majority came from Grandmaster Zicheng's personal pockets. It should be known that Grandmaster Zicheng had a way of making money. He was a 4-star alchemist, and added with the accumulation of so many years, the richness of his wealth was unimaginable. This forcefully threw Ling Han to the late stage of the 4th severance, and because the Empress only needed to focus on cultivation, she reached the peak stage of the 4th severance. But to break through to the 5th severance, this could not be achieved by just immersing herself in cultivation. She needed an opportunity. Right at this moment, a messenger arrived at Alchemy City. Chapter 1906. This messenger came from the Eternal Prosperity sect. When he arrived, Ling Han just so happened to come out of seclusion after 3 days, which could be considered a very coincidental event. Because the reputation of the Eternal Prosperity sect was too great, this messenger was arranged to stay on the 4th floor for 3 days. The moment Ling Han came out of seclusion, someone went to pass on the news, and Ling Han temporarily did not begin the rest of his seclusion, though he really couldn't be bothered to go see anyone at this time. After a while, a young man appeared. He was dressed in black, and his cultivation level was at the 4th severance, possessing an awe-inspiring heroic spirit. He was only a messenger, yet he possessed the aura of a king tier. It could be seen what kind of talents Yin Xianlu had under his command. Quite haughty, actually making me wait for 3 days. The moment this young man in black arrived at Ling Han's place, he showed an expression of displeasure. Hee. Ling Han grumbled internally, pointed at the door and said, "The door is there, you can scram." The young man couldn't help but be startled. He had not thought that Ling Han would be so direct and domineering. His face alternated between red and green, and after a while he said, "Ling Han, I have come on the orders of Lord Holy Sun." "Oh, which Holy Sun?" Ling Han asked disapprovingly. "Of course it's Holy Sun Yin Xianlu," the young man said proudly. "Aside from my lord, who else in the Eternal Prosperity sect is worthy of being called Holy Sun?" This was quite a boastful claim, but it was enough to show Yin Xianlu's might. He actually did not even have a single competitor. "Why is Yin Xianlu looking for me?" Ling Han crossed his legs, as if he had not clearly heard the name Yin Xianlu. The young man sucked in a breath of cold air, and looked at Ling Han calmly, showing an expression of shock. "How dare you?" Actually daring to call Yin Xianlu's name directly. He couldn't help but reprimand. "How dare you? Is the name of the Holy Sun something you can call directly?" Ling Han smirked coldly, and said, "You came to my place and still want to teach me how to behave." The young man wanted to make a move, but when he recalled Ling Han's past feats, he immediately gave up on the idea. He was indeed a king tier, but he was who knew how much weaker than Zhao Qingfeng. However, even Zhao Qifeng had been killed by Ling Han, so what was he? If he made a move, he would be sending himself to death. When you see my lord, you'll know how big the gap between you and Lord Saint is," the young man said proudly. He took out a letter and flicked it towards Ling Han. "My lord invites you to attend the meeting." Ling Han took the letter, but did not open it immediately. "In a year's time, there will be a gathering of geniuses at Broken Clouds Mountain," the young man said arrogantly. "Ling Han, Do you know that those who can receive the invitation of my master are all holy sons of celestial king tier level sects? You are the only exception. The specific time and place are written on the letter, provided that you can get it. He paused for a moment before continuing. This was personally written by my lord. Yan Xianlu had personally written it. Ling Han didn't think much of it at first, but now his interest was piqued. He began to open the envelope. There was a seal on it, which represented that the envelope was complete. When the seal was broken, a terrifying baleful aura was emitted from the envelope, as if it could split open the heavens. So powerful. Ling Han's heart clenched. When Yan Xianlu wrote, he must have also left behind his martial art intent on the letter. Now the specific time and place of the invitation were all written on the letter, and he could only go when he arrived. This is a test. I, Yan Xianlu, have invited you, but do you have the right to come? Wang, endless brilliant light surged, and the room was instantly filled with symbols of great Tao. It was as if a supreme elite was about to charge out of the envelope and give Ling Han a fatal blow. Ling Han showed a solemn expression, but his hands did not stop in the slightest, continuing to open the envelope. Yet the young man could not stand it anymore, and retreated continuously, a sliver of admiration appearing on his face. Ling Han was the first to bear the brunt of the attack, yet it was as if nothing had happened. Yet he retreated continuously. The gap between them could be seen clearly. No wonder he could kill Zhao Qingfeng and receive the personal invitation of the Holy Sun. However, you only opened the envelope and did not open the letter. That was the true test. He watched quietly from the side and saw that Ling Han had already taken out the letter inside. It was folded into 4 thin folds. Ling Han continued to open the letter. Wang, a flash of golden light surged out, turning into a golden divine sword that slashed out at Ling Han. Ling Han casually pressed down and extinguished it. When he opened it again, another azure treasured saber slashed out. He pressed down again, and the treasured saber was also scattered by him. At this time, the letter had also been completely opened. Wang, endless black light surged, and then turned into a fist that struck out at Ling Han with the power to look down on the whole world. A single punch could shatter the heavens, suppress the ages, and decide the universe. Domineering, arrogant. This was Yan Xianlu's martial art, and it exuded his invincible conviction. Ling Han too shot out a punch. This was a different kind of contest between the two of them. They could not rely on treasures like the divine demon sword, or else they would be at a disadvantage, and their invincible conviction would be shaken. The 2 fists collided. Ling Han's figure trembled slightly, and he retreated 3 steps, then stopped. He retreated another 7 steps, and only then did he finally hold the pole firmly. And there were 10 clear footprints on the tiles under his feet, each half a foot deep. That black fist also suddenly shattered, turning into black light again, and then forming a line of words. 3 Young Peak, when the 3 stars gather. This line of words only appeared for an instant, and then suddenly shattered, turning into nothingness. Ling Han, the letter has been delivered. Farewell, the young man said, a hint of admiration on his face. Being able to receive a blow from the Lord Holy Sun, his strength was really strong. Of course, compared to the Lord Holy Sun, he was not even worthy to carry the Holy Sun's shoes. It should be known that the Holy Sun had only casually written the letter, and Ling Han had still retreated 10 steps, using all his strength. The comparison of strength could not be any clearer. Ling Han ignored him. He looked at that letter, and because Yan Xianlu's martial art intent had already leaked out, the letter had also become blank. If he couldn't take that punch, he would only get a blank piece of paper. This was Yan Xianlu's dominance. I'm inviting you, but are you qualified? Ling Han showed a faint smile, his eyes blazing with fighting spirit. Honestly speaking, he was indeed no match for Yan Xianlu at present. Just from that punch previously, he knew that Yan Xianlu had definitely advanced into the 5th severance. Otherwise he would not have that kind of absolute dominance. If it were not for the fact that this was only a letter, and only contained a sliver of Yan Xianlu's martial intent, and if he had directly delivered a punch, Ling Han would have at least spat out a mouthful of blood. There is still 1 year, And I have to break through to the fifth severance, Ling Han mumbled. He had already decided to keep his appointment. Perhaps Yin Xianlu can give me enough pressure and allow me to obtain the opportunity to push open the door to the fifth severance. The heavenly Dao Jade was not omnipotent. It only increased that tiny sliver of hope. The key still depended on himself. However, the most important thing now is the second refinement. Half a year later we will see the truth. I'll put the matter of Yin Xianlu aside for now. Ling Han rubbed his chin, feeling that his time was really packed and completely not enough. Chapter 1908. Another person brimming with confidence was Kansas. He did not have any crystal, nor did he have any plant-dividing soul. But his alchemy level was indeed the most outstanding among all the holy sons and holy daughters. Though they were all two-star alchemists, and similarly could only perform second refinement, the quality of his completed pill could reach high grade, surpassing other people's starting point of medium grade and low grade. And in terms of spirit refinement, his first refinement level was praised by all alchemists. Every spirit refinement was very important. It did not mean that second refinement was more important, just because second refinement was harder than first refinement. That was not the case. Every spirit refinement was improving the quality of the celestial pill, and every spirit refinement was crucial. However, after spirit refinement, it was as if the alchemical pill also had a resistance, causing spirit refinement to become more and more difficult. Just based on his first refinement, he had the right to look down on 99% of alchemists. Otherwise, how could he have been chosen as a holy son? Now these 10 people definitely all had their own strong points. After all, holy daughters and holy daughters represented the face of a force. In the alchemy room, the 10 people first concocted the celestial pill. Some were happy, while others were sad, because some people could not withstand the pressure, and the quality of the alchemical pill they concocted was poor. At first it could reach medium grade, but now, it actually fell to low grade. Among them, Oken was naturally the proudest. The alchemical pill in his hands had reached high grade, matching his strength, and did not lose its level because of the pressure. The position of future chairperson will definitely be mine, he said in a voice that only he could hear. Ling Han Lu Xianming, just you wait. When I ascend to the position, it will be the day of your death. In comparison to alchemy, the time spent on spirit refinement was much less. If there was no failure, half a day's time was enough, and second refinement only needed a short day. Thus, those who did not reach their expectations during alchemy would start their second attempt. A little over 3 months' time was enough for each person to refine 3 times. Additionally, if spirit refinement failed, then the alchemical pill would be useless. Thus, even those who concocted an ideal alchemical pill would concoct a few more to deal with the possibility of spirit refinement failing. However, they were not in a rush. They could completely concoct alchemical pills and perform spirit refinement, and then decide if they wanted to continue concocting the next cauldron of alchemical pills according to the situation. A month later, Oken was the first to end the trial. He pushed open the door of the alchemy chamber and walked out, an incredibly confident smile on his face. The initial quality of the pill he had concocted was high grade. Furthermore, he had performed 2 spirit enhancements, the first of which was perfect, and the second of which was ordinary. All in all, he had achieved a breakthrough. That was why he was so confident. After a short while, Lu Xianming also pushed open the door and walked out, holding a pill in his hand. He was just as confident. The starting point of the elixir he was concocting was mid-grade, but because he had fused it with the lacking earth essence, he was able to perform 2 spirit refinements to perfection. This result was about the same as Okan's, but his advantage lay in his youth. If their results were the same, then he would naturally be the victor. After another while, Qing Guyu came out as well. Her face carried a look of exhaustion, but her eyes were extremely bright. She held the immortal pill in her hand, using her own cultivation to seal the pill's aura so that it wouldn't leak out. She didn't show the pill to anyone else. She wanted to amaze everyone with a single brilliant feat. None of them were in a hurry. They were also full of confidence in themselves as they headed towards the remaining 7 pill refining rooms. These were pill refining rooms that were specially used for observation and competition. Thus, the walls on all 4 sides were transparent from the outside, but the insides were not visible from the outside. This way, people could observe properly, and the people inside could also concentrate. What is he doing? Someone suddenly pointed at the pill refining room that Ling Han was in, his expression incredibly shocked. Because after Ling Han had concocted an alchemical pill, he actually crushed it after taking a whiff of it. This definitely couldn't be a useless pill. Firstly, if the concoction had failed, then there wouldn't be any alchemical pill left at all. Secondly, judging from the color and luster of this alchemical pill, it should have reached the level of mid-grade no matter what. You actually crushed it? What did that mean? Everyone looked over when they heard that, and were all extremely shocked. They didn't understand what Ling Han was trying to do. Have you given up on yourself? Humph. Lu Xianming and the others were all cold. This brat was indeed incapable. It had only been a mere 3 years, so what heights could he possibly reach? What he had concocted was definitely a 1-star alchemical pill, so he had destroyed it himself to avoid making a fool of himself. Then why did he still come over? What a joke. He had caused such a huge commotion previously, and if he cowered now, how would he have the face to see others in the future? Thus, he pretended to concoct alchemical pills. In any case, they were separated by a room, so everyone could only see if he had successfully concocted the alchemical pill. But they didn't know exactly what alchemical pill he had concocted. Thus, he could completely pass himself off as genuine. There was no need to treat him as an opponent at all. Aside from Ling Han, there were 6 other people who didn't come out immediately. Instead, after completing the spirit refinement, they began to concoct a second alchemical pill, hoping that they could concoct an even better alchemical pill and perform a more outstanding spirit refinement to improve their results. Another month passed, and another 3 holy sons pushed open the door and came out. Now, only 4 people were still continuing to concoct alchemical pills. Unexpectedly, Ling Han concocted a second cauldron of celestial pills, and then crushed it himself. True enough, this guy was definitely concocting a 1-star alchemical pill, so he didn't dare to show the alchemical pill he had concocted to others at all. Not only did Lu Xianming and the others think this way, but the other alchemists also thought the same. Only alchemist Zicheng showed an expression of admiration. He naturally knew of Ling Han's alchemy prowess. The alchemical pills he had concocted in the previous 2 attempts were definitely 2-star, and the quality was better each time. So why did he crush it? This was Ling Han pressuring him, forcing him to break through in an extremely short time. For the 3rd cauldron, not only did he have to succeed, but the quality of the pills he had concocted had to improve further. Ruthless, really ruthless. Alchemist Zicheng really admired this disciple too much. Even if others had to concoct 3 cauldrons, they definitely wouldn't discard the pills from the first 2 cauldrons. Instead, they would choose the best of the 3 cauldrons. What about Ling Han? He had forced himself into a dead end, but at the same time, this also showed how confident Ling Han was. In this 3rd cauldron, he would definitely concoct better pills. Only those who possessed such confidence and great determination were worthy of being his disciple, and only those who had the right to walk towards the peak of alchemy. Alchemist Zicheng stroked his beard with a slight smile. Even if Ling Han really failed, he would still think of a way to smooth things over. So what? I'm just that shameless. If you have the ability, come and bite me. Meanwhile, Lu Xianming and the others were even more disdainful. It was only a mere 3 years, so there was indeed no need to treat Ling Han as a rival. They really thought too highly of him. Ling Han's mind was completely focused on concocting pills. Right now, his spirit was in an incredibly subtle state, almost ethereal. This filled him with confidence, and the alchemical pills he concocted would be better with each cauldron. When he concocted the 3rd cauldron, he felt an urge to destroy it and refine it again. However, after a shudder, he suddenly remembered that this was an examination, so he couldn't be reckless. He hurriedly stopped and began to perform spirit refinement. There were a total of 3 pills in this cauldron. After performing spirit refinement for the first time, Ling Han shook his head and directly tossed the alchemical pill away. Then, he picked up the second pill and continued to perform spirit refinement, but in the end, he tossed it away again. Only the last pill was left. Chapter 1909. Ling Han was the type of person who would be more motivated the more pressure he was under. There was only one last alchemical pill left. Instead, he broke into a smile, a calm expression on his face. His hands flipped, and he began to work. Outside, aside from Ling Han, the other 9 people had already completed their pill concoction and spirit refinement, and there was only a bit of time left until the deadline of 1 day. However, in the alchemy room, because there was the effect of time acceleration, there was enough time for Ling Han to complete 2 more spirit refinements. Everyone's gazes focused on him. Playing to the gallery, Lu Xianming's expression was filled with disdain. Ling Han's previous 2 spirit refinements had only been first refinement before throwing away the alchemical pill. What did this mean? It had to be that he could only first refinement, so he deliberately threw it away to hide his lack of ability. Yes, this guy had only used 4 or 5 years to reach first refinement. This was very awesome, but the problem was, the starting point of the test was 2-star alchemical pills and second refinement. Then, no matter how perfect his first refinement was, no matter how little time he spent on alchemy, so what? This was also the reason why Lu Jin had set a 3-year deadline with alchemist Zicheng. Because in such a short time, no matter how freakish a genius was, it was impossible to reach second refinement. Even alchemist Zicheng was slightly nervous. Ling Han really did not have the slightest path of retreat. If he did not succeed, he would die trying. He was flustered from worry, and he would be more confident in concocting the alchemical pill himself. But now, he was so nervous that his palms were sweating. This little disciple really knew how to play with people's hearts. First refinement completed, Ling Han broke into a smile. In the past half a year, he had been constantly improving his level of first refinement, gradually reaching a perfect level. Furthermore, it was built on his own techniques. This was astonishing, and it represented that he could possibly create a system of spirit refinement that belonged to him in the future. At first, there were still some small flaws, but after a few imperfect spirit refinements, and under immense pressure, he completed the refinement. First refinement perfect. Let's begin second refinement. He waved his hands, and the celestial pill immediately danced. Bursts of fiery light flew out from his palms, turning into multiple lines that wrapped around the celestial pill like a spider web. Ling Han was so focused that he had forgotten that this was a test, and was purely refining an alchemical pill. Ethereal, carefree, and close to the great Tao. When they saw this scene, many alchemists were astonished and moved. This kind of state was very rare. It allowed the quality of the alchemical pills concocted to be a notch higher than usual. It was as if heaven and earth were helping them. Then, the great Tao would naturally be easily extracted, and resonated with the medicinal effects. Heavens, under the heavy pressure of the assessment, this kid can actually enter the ethereal state? Damn, he really didn't know whether to say that this kid had no desire for fame or wealth, or that he was born to be an alchemist. The expressions of Lu Xianming and the others changed. Ling Han could actually reach the second refinement. The second refinement was not something to be trifled with. How could that be? It had only been 3 years, and he might not even have reached the first refinement. How could he have reached the second refinement? But the facts spoke louder than words, and they were completely speechless. He could only hope that the quality of the medicinal pills that Ling Han refined was not high, and the standard of the second refinement was not that great either. I believe that just based on the fact that Holy Sun Ling could enter an ethereal state at such a time, he is qualified to become the chairperson of Alchemy City, someone suddenly said. That's right. This is really too rare. Quite a few people agreed. That's not right. There was naturally someone who objected. An assessment is an assessment. Nothing can be accomplished without rules. That's right. Could it be that if he can't become the chairperson, He can't shine in Alchemy City? This also received the support of a considerable number of people. The people on both sides began to argue, though no one was convinced in a short while. This caused Lu Xianming and the others to pale in fright. There had never been something like this. The assessment had not even ended, and almost half of the people already had someone to support. It should be known that there was still alchemist Zicheng behind Ling Han. As long as he said a word at this time and supported Ling Han, that would definitely be the final word. Thankfully, alchemist Zicheng's expression was calm all along, and he did not speak. He was filled with confidence in Ling Han, and would not stoop to using this kind of little trick at all. Of course, if Ling Han really failed in his spirit refinement, he would not mind using his own influence to change the opinions of some people. Could it be that the abilities of the disciple that he had taught still need to be doubted? In the alchemy chamber, a day quietly passed. Ling Han stretched out a hand and grabbed. Boom! The 9 heavens flame surged, wrapping around the celestial pill. The flames were fierce, wanting to burn the celestial pill into ashes. Just at this moment, Ling Han suddenly moved again, and the Xianin source water was channeled. Water and fire countered each other, and the might of the 9 heavens flame was instantly suppressed. Ice and fire collided, and extreme cold and extreme fire intersected, creating a miraculous change. This was Ling Han's understanding of alchemy and medicinal theory. Boom! Ice and fire surged, and then everything returned to normal. Ling Han frowned, feeling an urge to destroy this alchemical pill. It was actually a little short of perfection. He had initially thought that 2 spirit refinements would be perfect, which made him feel that it was a pity, and he wanted nothing more than to start another cauldron of spirit refinement. I failed, Lu Xianming and the others thought. No, if I failed, I would definitely lose the alchemical pill. This is spirit refinement, so the quality of the spirit refinement is definitely not good enough. That's why he has such a bitter expression. The other 9 holy sons and holy daughters calmed down slightly. The failure this time would definitely be a heavy blow to Ling Han's popularity. As Ling Han also pushed open the door and walked out, alchemist Zicheng spoke up and said, "Since everyone is ready, then let us begin to appraise the quality of the alchemical pill." He paused and casually called out names. Luo Ying, Zigong, Gong Tian, the 10 of you are responsible for appraising. Yes. 10 alchemists walked out, and they were all 3-star alchemists. After they were assigned, they each stood in front of a holy son and holy daughter, and then began to appraise the alchemical pill together. Alchemy took a very long time, but the appraisal only needed a short while. Furthermore, these 10 were all 3-star alchemists, but the selection of the future chairperson of Alchemy City was a very important matter. Thus, they repeatedly appraised the alchemical pill several times before coming to a conclusion. Report the results according to the order in which they came out, Grandmaster Zicheng said calmly. Holy Son Oken has concocted the Azure Peak Spirit Transformation Pill. Among 2-star alchemical pills, the difficulty of concocting is medium, and the grade of the completed pill is high grade. The first spirit refinement is perfect, and the second spirit refinement is ordinary, a 3-star alchemist immediately reported. Grandmaster Zicheng nodded and said, "Let's use this result as the basis, and set it as 10 points, and proceed with addition and subtraction." Good. All the alchemists nodded. Since they were going to make a comparison, there definitely had to be a reference. Holy Son Lu Xianming has concocted the Jade Bone Pill. Among 2-star alchemical pills, the difficulty of concocting is low, and the grade of the completed pill is medium grade. The first spirit refinement is perfect, and the second spirit refinement is perfect, a second alchemist reported. Grandmaster Zicheng pondered slightly and said, "The difficulty of concocting and the grade of the completed pill are both a little inferior, but the 2 spirit refinements are both perfect. Furthermore, Lu Xianming has only stepped onto the path of alchemy for 200 million years, so he can add points. In the end, he will get 11 points. Is there anyone who objects?" Okan's expression instantly paled. He had not thought that he would be defeated so quickly. Good. All the alchemists nodded. Alchemist Zicheng did not deliberately suppress Lu Xianming, just because he was Lu Jin's disciple. He was really of noble character and unquestionable integrity. Yet Ling Han snickered internally. How was this master of his noble character and unquestionable integrity? Rather, it was because he was certain that he would win. So he had deliberately done this. It would be a waste not to gain some popularity. Sly old fox, oh no, cunning and circumspect. Reading on a mobile phone. Chapter 1910. A good story. Holy daughter Qin Guyu has concocted an earth-replenishing pill. Among 2-star alchemical pills, the difficulty level is high, and the grade of the completed pill is superb grade. The first spirit refinement is ordinary, and the second spirit refinement is ordinary, the third alchemist reported. When his words fell, everyone was in an uproar. A 2-star alchemist was actually able to reach the grade of superb grade when concocting an alchemical pill of high difficulty level. This was too exaggerated. Astounding, too astounding. Even Grandmaster Zicheng showed an expression of admiration and said to Qin Guyu, "You advanced into the dividing soul tier 300,000 years ago. Could it be that your first dividing soul was formed from the 5 elements of heaven and earth?" As expected of a Grandmaster of alchemy, he immediately guessed the reason, but as for the specific element, even he could not possibly determine it. Yes, Qin Guyu immediately replied respectfully. My yang soul is the essence of water and wood. The essence of water and wood. Everyone showed an expression of envy. This kind of yang soul was completely useless in battle and cultivation. But in alchemy, it was like a gift from the heavens. Only the fire and wood dividing souls, and the earth and wood dividing souls could compare. This would definitely give her a great boost in points. Grandmaster Zicheng pondered slightly, and then said, overall score 11. Qin Guyu was slightly disappointed, but now that she was tied for first place with Lu Xianming, and had also surpassed Okan, she no longer had any other opponents. In future, it would be a competition between her and Lu Xianming, and she was a dividing soul of water and wood, and as her cultivation level increased, the wonders of alchemy would be revealed step by step, becoming even more dazzling and dazzling. Lu Xianming was definitely no match for her. Okan was even more disappointed. He knew that the position of chairperson was already incredibly far away from him. All of a sudden, he lost all hope, and sat down on the ground, not knowing what expression he should have. The 4th, 5th, 6th, the 10 alchemists all reported the grade of the alchemical pill they had appraised, and Grandmaster Zicheng scored them one by one. He was impartial, and everyone was convinced. Finally, it was Ling Han's turn. Holy Son Ling Han has concocted a heavenly flame pill. Among 2-star alchemical pills, the difficulty level is high, and the grade of the completed pill is high grade. First spirit refinement is perfect. Second spirit refinement is perfect, the 10th alchemist reported. What? Everyone was in an uproar. Even though the medicinal pill Ling Han refined was slightly inferior to Qin Guyu's, it had still attained the high grade. Coupled with his age in the Tao of alchemy, he was absolutely able to make up for the gap between the two of them, and even surpass Qin Guyu. And yet, both of his spirit enhancements were perfect. Hiss. That's not right. Weren't you frowning just now? Didn't you mess it up? A smile involuntarily spread across Grandmaster Zicheng's face. When he saw the doubtful expressions on the faces of many people, he said, the 10 of you can all be appraised. The other 9 3-star alchemists hurriedly gathered around. If they did not personally witness it, they would really not be able to believe it. But not long after, all of them revealed looks of astonishment, as well as a kind of reverence towards a genius, even if Ling Han's current level of alchemy was still inferior to theirs. The first spirit enhancement was perfect, but the second spirit enhancement was slightly flawed, but it can still be considered perfect. The 10 alchemists discussed for a while, and gave their final conclusion. As for the quality of the completed pill, there was no mention of it, so it was naturally confirmed. I don't believe it. Lu Xianming cried out involuntarily. Without needing Grandmaster Zicheng to appraise, everyone knew that Ling Han had won, and had surpassed the various holy sons by more than just a little bit. Humph! How can the conclusion of the 10 of us be questioned by you? a 3-star alchemist said rudely. How many 4-star alchemists were there? Though Lu Xianming was a holy son, his future achievements should only be that of a 3-star alchemist, and added with the fact that he was only a 2-star alchemist now. What right did he have to doubt the unified conclusion of 10 3-star alchemists? If you're not convinced, then fuck off. There's no need for you to be convinced. Grandmaster Ziqing nodded and said, I give Ling Han 15 points. Is there anyone who is not convinced? They all felt that it was definite that Ling Han had surpassed Lu Xianming and Qin Guyu, but it was not to the extent of reaching the height of 15 points. 12 or 13 points should be about right. But in any case, it would not affect the result, so what need was there to dampen Grandmaster Zicheng's spirits? After all, he was their disciple, so it was understandable to give him a little boost. Unfortunately, they did not truly understand. Grandmaster Zicheng gave Ling Han 15 points, not because he was deliberately raising Ling Han's score, but rather because he had taken into consideration Ling Han's unique spirit refinement technique into consideration. Just based on this, adding 2 or 3 points was definitely reasonable. No matter what, Ling Han had now won with an indisputable advantage. I declare that the future chairperson of Alchemy City will be Ling Han, Grandmaster Zicheng said, his voice rolling like thunder, resounding in every corner of the 5 levels of Alchemy City. After 300 million years, I will step down, and Ling Han will succeed me. Yes. In the palace, everyone bowed. The replacement of the old with the new was successfully completed, and Ling Han's potential also made everyone believe that this boy would definitely become a 4-star alchemist in future, and even surpass Grandmaster Zicheng. Even if he could not become a 5-star alchemist, perhaps he could reach 8th refinement in spirit refinement. Everyone left one after another, and Qin Guyu and Lu Xianming both glared at Ling Han with eyes filled with resentment. If it were not for the sudden rise of Ling Han, they both had a chance of becoming the chairperson of Alchemy City. But one step was heaven and one step was hell. Congratulations, Holy Son Ling. The other Holy Sons all came over to offer their congratulations. They knew that in future, they would have to live in the shadow of Ling Han. Unless they were willing to leave Alchemy City, they would have to lower their heads to Ling Han. Ling Han smiled faintly at them and nodded. He was a very magnanimous person in the first place. Holy Son Ling, Oken also walked over. Though his face was unbelievably pale, he still congratulated Ling Han. Speaking of which, this kind of result was actually a little easier for him to accept, because he had already suffered a deep blow from the very beginning. But there were many twists and turns, and neither Lu Xianming nor Qin Guyu had succeeded in ascending to the position, which made his heart feel much more balanced. Ling Han looked at him with a smile. Oken had been very arrogant at the time, and had wanted to recruit him, but had not succeeded, so he had threatened him, and had even developed malicious thoughts. All that happened yesterday shall be buried in yesterday. From now onwards, I am willing to follow Holy Son Ling, and do my part for the strengthening of Alchemy City. Oken half knelt on the ground, and declared his loyalty to Ling Han. Was he really pledging his allegiance? Or was he deliberately trying to get close to him with ulterior motives? Ling Han showed a confident smile. He had the magnanimity to tolerate everyone in the world. But if there was anyone by his side who still harbored disloyal thoughts, then don't blame him for being merciless and erasing them all. All right, then we shall work together. Ling Han helped Oken up, and Oken smiled. It was as if the grudge between the two of them had been resolved with a smile. But whether Oken was sincere or not, one might know a man's face but not his heart. That would have to be proven by time. Next, the city would naturally hold a distinguished meeting. This time, no outsiders would be invited. 300 million years later, when alchemist Zicheng stepped down from his position, and Ling Han ascended to the throne, he would definitely invite the whole world. That was a matter for the future. 5 days later, the excitement died down, and Ling Han made preparations to meet Yin Xianlu. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference. as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.